Okay, good evening. Welcome to tonight's committee meeting. We're going to start off with activities, but for starters, there's no one that signed up for the activities agenda, but we do have like our overall agenda items. So we'll start for public comment for overall, and first one up is Laura Foster.
Wait, is this public comment, like, is it for each of the committees? Like, do I get to have like through administration committee, or is that like
Yeah.
before?
So the overall one is, because so not everyone can stay for all the committees, so we want to give everyone a chance to speak to any committee at the beginning, and then there will still be comments at the beginning of each committee meeting also.
Oh, okay, all right, well, okay.
If people want to comment on every committee meeting, you know.
Okay.
3 minutes.
Wait. Okay, so Laura Foster, I want to talk on 2 committees. I'll talk about policy and curriculum too, about the books. So first, let's just, talk about the pink elephant in the room here, and just put this up here so everyone can know what I'm referencing as I'm going through some conversation points here. So somehow Ricky, Jordan, Christine, and Bob find this so offensive that they had to approve a policy to ban it. This wasn't born from libertarians or from Democrats. It's not a political symbol. It was commissioned by Harvey Milk after he faced discrimination for being the first openly gay elected official in California. Harvey was assassinated, as most of you know, and the rainbow flag took off in larger support of the queer community. He was killed for being gay. So I'm sure most of you know about the OCR complaint. I hope that you all have read it. You should know that in the OCR complaint, it details threats of death towards queer kids happening here at Pennridge. You would know that the N-word is basically an adjective used freely in Pennridge. And when these kids stand up for themselves, they're disproportionately punished compared to the white counterparts. Read the PCCY report that you've all been sent like 3 times now, it talks about that. Some of our black students actually have been charged in adult court because they threw the first punch after constantly being barraged with the N-word over and over and over again. Summary citations in adult court for these kids. You would know about the incredibly racist remarks that have been said to little elementary school children, forcing many of these families to pull their kids out of Pennridge because the school did not respond appropriately. All of this is a result of the old board putting into place discriminatory policies like this one. If there's just one kid that it discriminates against, is that enough? Is that enough to say we shouldn't have this? It should be. Pulling safe spaces away from these kids is absolutely horrendous. So, you all should know that all the school board members here are currently listed as respondents on the OCR complaint. It's not just the old board. If my name was listed on a federal complaint, I would read it and see what's going on. I would care about what's happening to these kids. I would work to find out not just what is going wrong by fixing policy, I would see what I can do to make it right. So fixing policy isn't enough. Our school desperately needs to foster a climate of inclusivity, specifically for our BIPOC and queer kids. You cannot say that this is a great school by any means until it becomes a great school for everyone. I would love to hear, thank you, what this board is doing about that. What are you doing to proactively make this an inclusive environment for our queer and black and brown kids? All right, so that is policy.
So,
moving on.
Sorry, real quick, because I actually didn't start the timer for yours. So if this is for 2, do we allow 3 and 3? Like,
It's still just all supposed to be within 3 minutes.
I thought that was 2. I would have saved it for the other one.
But to be honest, I totally messed with the timer, so I
I
don't
think there's
know.
one stream that's speaking anyway. But, I mean,
So it's 3 minutes at the beginning, but then you can also speak at the beginning of each committee meeting too.
So do you want to save that for like the beginning of policy? Or do you want to?
well, it's for curriculum. I mean, I'd like to say it now just to get it out of the way.
All right, we'll give you a minute.
A minute?
A minute? I don't have, if it's a choice between a minute and 3 minutes, I'll wait. Because if you want me to wait for it, do it for 3 minutes, I'll wait till beginning of
Is that okay?
Well, if it's for
Yeah.
curriculum's after activities. So-
Okay, all right.
And activities is short.
I can leave this up here, yes,
This-
if you want.
Okay, Jane Kramer then is up next.
Alright. Do the next.
Jane Kramer, Sellersville. October is LGBTQ History Month, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about National Coming Out Day. National Coming Out Day is an annual LGBTQ plus awareness day that was first organized in 1987 to mark the anniversary of the National March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights. The idea for the day comes from the belief that homophobia and transphobia thrive in silence. Silence. That is what the advocacy policy did. It encouraged teachers to avoid talking about queer people because apparently our very existence is controversial. I strongly encourage the board to retire the advocacy policy that was brought to Pennridge by the Independence Law Center. It was never needed. It did not solve a problem. It was manufactured outrage. And reinstate the political activities policy, which is completely appropriate for a public school. Thank you.
All right, next up, Kelly Smolla.
I would prefer to wait. I always want to speak to the curriculum.
Okay. And so next up then is Ross McClellan.
Alright. I also brought up Rob. First of all, happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Ross McClellan, Hilltown. I'm against the current advocacy policy. It is ambiguous and it prohibits advocacy by not supporting BIPOC and LGBTQ students. We don't need it. We need to go back to before 2022, when it was just fine to give our children their identity. What changed? We know the Independence Law Center was involved back then. Are they still involved now? I saw their lawyer, Rendell Wagner, talking out front with the Pennridge GOP prayer group a couple meetings ago. Why would he be interested in talking to the Pennridge GOP if he didn't feel that he had an opportunity here in the district? Many of our policies from this past board came directly from the ILC. Get rid of all those policies.
Yes.
I suspect that the ILC is still offering help to some of our board members. Why not? Kick the ILC out like the previous board that was overwhelmingly voted out, like Vermillion. They are all bad news, not good for our students, district, and community. We all know by now the Callawhill Bridge is open. Beating the scheduled date by 3 weeks. This bridge closed due to damage from Hurricane Ida in September 2021, over 3 years ago. Parts of our district were basically cut off for hours with floodwater and damage. The Menlo Park covered bridge even floated. Okay? And well over 100-year-old Callawhill Bridge broke. It was quite a flood. Yet our students and teachers can't advocate the science of human-driven causes of climate change. We're not allowed to do that here in this school. It was also at this moment in September of 2021 that one of our school board directors called out a local community leader who works with our LGBTQ students, calling her work inappropriate and accusing her of grooming. That was the start. Then later in 2021, the gag order came down on counselors and teachers helping students, and so many other ILC policy changes were made. And the first book banning started with emails from well-known Pennridge GOP. It was political. The Callawhill Bridge is fixed. But it seems our district is still in the grips of the right-wing scheme to upend public education. Lastly, when did it become that parents should control what is taught in schools? Parents do have the option to send their children to private schools. The purpose of a public education in a public school is to teach kids only what, is that my time?
Yeah.
I want to get my time. I have one more sentence. Not even more numbers. Thank you.
And then that is it then for public comment for the overall. So we'll just move into the activities agenda. We have one item on for tonight, an overnight trip proposal.
I was signed up right after Jane, but nobody called me.
Kelly Smola?
No, that's me.
Phoebe Wilcox?
You might be, did you sign up for a specific committee?
Because there's like it is confusing. There was like an overall one, and then there was like specific, like activities, curriculum, but that's fine. If you would prefer to speak now, that's fine.
I also signed up.
Okay.
For policy?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can speak now, or you can speak before the policy committee.
Okay. I like to speak now.
Yes, Phoebe. She said Phoebe. Okay.
Or I'll take the policy one and then mark down where it spoke, so.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Phoebe Wilcox. I'm from Bedminster Township. My daughter's graduated here a few years ago. And basically, I would like to see Pennridge go in a more progressive direction and not, I know a lot of bright type schools put paint progressive as being a bad word, but I see progressive as being accepting, forward-thinking, intellectual, fair-minded. And this school is a public school, not a Christian school.
Yes.
So there's no place here for, not to bash Christians, but at times they can be pretty unaccepting of other people who aren't like them. So this is a public school and should be accepting of every type of student that comes here. No matter what they look like or what they, what they feel about their, gender identity or anything at all like that. So it's just been disheartening. I mean, I experienced it when my girls were here, and when my girls were here, I was, concerned that they would have police coming through with dogs sniffing at lockers. I'm like, what is this, Nazi Germany? What? This is a school. My daughters, didn't really want me to stick my neck out and get involved because I think they were concerned about repercussions for themselves. And they were, well-behaved, people that would never have any problem in school whatsoever about anything. But still they were concerned, and that tells you something. 2 good students that were concerned that there could be repercussions on them. So anyway, I just, like the people before me, I feel like this school needs to forge into the future. We're not in the 1800s, we're not Nazi Germany. This is a public school, and people should, you should respect books. Libraries should be inclusive, book inclusive, not banning. That's ridiculous. It's absurd. How many of the best authors, prize-winning authors, have been banned at one point or another?
That sounds actually longer.
Are you Peter?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. My name is Peter Swerble, and I'm here to talk about policy. I'm a Percy resident and a 2022 graduate of Pennridge High School. I also served as the president of Pennridge's Gay Straight Alliance from 2020 to 2022, and even won a senior award for leadership. The changes to the now named Advocacy Activities Policy was first made aware to me my senior year of high school. Dozens of my GSA kids came to me scared, asking, what does this mean? What's allowed? What's not? Am I going to get in trouble? How are other people going to treat me now? Many of them are already jaded, saying, well, that's just how it is in Pennsylvania. What do you expect? I explained to them time and time again, this is not normal. For so long, it was not like this. Just a year before that, it was not like this. My freshman year, our GSA president bought a rainbow flag for the school's hallway of flags. He refused to hang it with the other flags, but eventually found a permanent place for it. Even though it was hung in a less populated area, I know it brought solace to a lot of queer kids coming into the high school each and every day. And it meant so much to us that this public institution was finally acknowledging and somewhat supporting an aspect of their student body that they historically shunned. For the first years of existence for the Pennridge Gay Straight Alliance, the club was not allowed to vocally connect itself to the Pennridge School District. They couldn't even meet on school grounds. They had to walk over to the college campus. I learned about this while tabling for the GSA once. The very first president of the GSA came to our table, and he told us about how he was so glad that we were even allowed to affiliate ourselves with Pennridge in a public space, and about how far Pennridge had come from the early 2000s. Well now, after nearly 20 years of progress, the district has regressed. All this current policy does is put Pennridge's name further and further into the gutter, and puts the well-being of queer kids at risk. Not to mention what it's like to be a teacher trying to just make a few kids feel a bit more welcome and comfortable in their classroom, so their kids can feel safe enough to learn. This policy is archaic and just flat out mean. Do away with it now so it can become a frustrating blip in our history instead of becoming a defining scar. Thank you.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Did we get everybody?
All right, then we can move on to the only agenda item on tonight's activities, which is the overnight trip proposal for cheerleading nationals. Is Mr. Hayden?
Coach Grenady
Okay.
is here.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for having me. My name's Kayla and I am the cheer coach for the high school team. So I'm here tonight to propose the overnight trip to our national competition that is hosted in Disney World every year. So for this trip, it is the national championship for our cheerleaders. If we are able to qualify and get a bid, the cheerleaders would leave the morning of or afternoon, depending on the flights, February 5th. And over the course of that weekend, they will be performing both for their traditional and game day routines. On the game day team, we have about 21 athletes this year, and then for our traditional team, we have 12 girls on that team. So hoping to have their performances showcased on the national level. This event for our high school athletes provides a unique opportunity to get out in front of some other colleges and very well-respected cheerleading programs in the nation. So it's a great opportunity for them to just experience something bigger outside of their community and to be able to get recognized for hopefully future college endeavors. We've been doing this trip for ever since I was in high school. I think I was the first team to ever go back in 2015, so it's definitely something that we want to keep continuing and keep offering for our team here at Pennridge.
That's awesome. I love it. I think it's great too. I'm dating myself, but years ago I remember coming to some of the games and the squad was relatively small.
Yeah.
And it's really grown and it's awesome to see, you know, so many out there. So I'm excited for you guys. I don't know if anybody else has any questions, but.
And this is your first time taking the team, though?
Yes, but I was the assistant coach for the past 2 years, so I have been down as a coach and everything before. So, yeah.
Thank you, Coach Grenady. Anybody have questions? Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so
Best
much,
of luck.
guys.
Thank you.
Okay, then that is it for activities. And I think we're moving on to curriculum.
Curriculum, yeah, so I
And then
think.
there's two.
Thank you.
everyone. I'm Christine Batisky, co-chair of curriculum with Mr. Merkel Gump. We have two public comments for tonight. Laura Foster.
I can donate this to the school if you guys are looking for flags. We have plenty of them at our house. Laura Foster, East Rockville. So about the 22 books that were reviewed by the Pennridge High School librarian, I do appreciate there being a process in place to review books. I don't quite understand why we're reviewing books that were pulled out by Christine, Bob, Ricky, and Jordan because they didn't like them. Just in general, can we stop doing this? Like, can we stop pulling books? Can there be a standard in the review process that if there is mention of sex or, I don't know, someone's gay, that there be an understanding that parents can always opt their children out if they find it offensive? It's no big news flash that some of our high school students are having sex. I'd rather my kids learn about it through books that explore relationships and consent than on Pornhub, which most of the kids today have on their phones anyway. So I don't know if you guys heard of Common Sense Media. They recently did a poll and they found that 73% of kids aged 13 to 17 said that they have watched porn online. The average age they started was at 12 years old. 7 in 10 who admitted that they watched porn intentionally did so in the past week. 4 in 10 said they watched pornography, including nudity and sexual acts, during the school day. Almost half said they did it on school-owned devices. Of those who watched last week, 80% said that they had seen what appears to be rape, choking, or someone in pain. This is the problem here. This is like where we need books that explore about sexual relationships and about consent. Because they're all already doing it anyway. Not all, but it's a part of our school culture as it is. This isn't 1995. This is the reality of our students. So why pull away books that talk about them? You were elected to stop the banning of books. Why are there more and more books being pulled away from our libraries? You pander and you pander and you pander to the hate groups for whose benefits? I honestly don't think that there's many kids that are taking books from the library anyway. So I feel like that all this is doing is going through and just like whitewashing books. I feel like it's a waste of time. What I would like to know is what you're doing to build up resources for our queer and BIPOC kids. Kindly share one thing that you've done to help these kids in the past year. It's not Vermillion. They left before you took office. In fact, for some odd reason, our curriculum committee decides to keep Jordan Adams' whitewash recommendations, like taking out Tears of a Tiger from RELA. Why hasn't this changed yet? Many community members have been asking for it to be reinstated. I'm asking for it now. Can you please reinstate back Tears of a Tiger? Bathroom policy that you compromised on is still an illegal AR. You know what the GSA kids told us at our first meeting when it was back to school? They said the bathrooms are a mess. They said if you go into a gender-based bathroom, everyone automatically assumes you're queer, and you can never get into the single-use bathrooms. It has not been fixed. Back to the OCR complaint. It's been around long enough that there is now an addendum filled with a whole new set of complaints where all the names that have taken out, all the names all of you for not changing the environment for policies. Yet our board has not taken any proactive measures to address racism, homophobia, transphobia at Pennridge.
It's
All of-
overtime.
It's our time, I'm sorry, yeah, so I was
Okay.
talking very loudly.
Okay.
All of your names are on it. I really encourage you to read the OCR complaint. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Kelly Smola.
Hello, I am in the Perksy Borough. I have 3 children currently enrolled in Pennridge. I have a 7th grader, a 9th grader, and 11th grader. And I'm here to raise concerns and excitement about the possible change in the middle school math program. My excitement is that you're going to offer more differentiation. I think it's awesome that there's going to be a differentiation in 6th grade. All 3 of my kids would have greatly benefited from that. I'm very concerned that you're considering removing Algebra 1 and from 7th and geometry from 8th grade. All 3 of my kids took both of those classes in those grades. My 7th graders currently taking it now. When I mentioned it, she freaked out about what on earth math she's going to take next year. So I'm hoping that that will be addressed later so that I can go home and tell her, because she's very concerned about that. That's what the curriculum looked like 30 years ago when I took middle school math. We took pre-algebra in 7th grade, algebra 1 in 8th grade, and then geometry in high school. And I was so bored, and I was so excited that my very mathy children had the opportunity to basically move a level down into the lower grades, and were able to start in algebra in 7th grade. They have all thrived. My 11th grader is currently taking AP Calculus AB and comes home and starts explaining stuff that I don't remember anymore, and my husband doesn't remember anymore, but he's so excited because all these pieces of math are coming together from across all the curriculums that he's learned so far, and he starts babbling stuff at us that we're like, sure. It is awesome. I know the idea is they can make up the math with the block scheduling, and they can double up in a year, but then they don't get the opportunity to take other classes at the high school that are offered. And the kids that are trying to take the AP courses already struggle trying to fit all the other things they want to take, because of course they want to take all kinds of things, not just the upper level math, social studies, English, and all of that. And so offering the higher level maths at the lower ages for those kids that really want to take that stuff throughout their high school career gives them that opportunity then to, in high school, take the classes that obviously are not being able to be offered at the middle school level. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our first agenda item is AP Pre-Calculus for 2025-2026 school year with Mr. Mike Gurish.
All right, thank you for having me back. I watched the video of last time. I spoke for a long time last time. I think it'll be a little shorter this evening. I do want to talk about AP Pre-Calculus. When I first came on board, there was a very enthusiastic group of people wanting to investigate this proposal to bring in AP Pre-Calculus. As far as the slides go, the first group of slides are all about taken right from College Board's website to kind of give us a flavor for what this course is all about and who it's designed for. About students, and College Board has set this up, so students who've taken Geometry and Algebra 2 before their senior year would be ready to pursue this course. There's also a group of slides here. Just these are testimonials, just to give you a flavor of what types of students, if we go through, I won't read all of these to you, but there are students in here that are very interested in math. There are others that are in humanities, and maybe could take AP Pre-Calculus to get college credit because they don't want to take math in college. They want to explore other things there. So it's made for students of all ability levels and all different types of majors. And I think that's really important to provide this opportunity as we have our AP Calculus A, B, and BC and Physics C and these courses that are for our very top kids. And we do a lot at our very lowest level to make sure that those kids can be in situations where they're proficient. But this is more aimed at students who are more in the middle, to get those kids who have never taken an AP class before an opportunity to take a class at this level and to have kind of a gateway to step into these AP courses that may have not in the past. So if you look through those testimonials and what College Board is talking about, that is kind of their aim, to kind of fill a need that we've never fulfilled for our students and to get more students involved in that. And then there's a slide in here just about, again, these are all kind of the same thing about when you take algebra. If you've taken it in 9th grade, there's still an opportunity for you to do that. So I really think that this is something that, the committee we looked at, and we were looking at this as an opportunity to reach some students that we not always are looking at. And we did have a number of concerns that I do want to talk about. There were hours and hours and hours of very rigorous conversations about this, and it seemed like it's pretty straightforward, but there are a lot of things that both the math teachers at the high school, the assistant principals there, also in talking with the county-wide curriculum committee, and brought up some good points. One was we already have a number of teachers that have gone through and done the training for this, that are very enthusiastic about it. And there is concerns about this target audience and the rigor of the actual AP test. They think this is a difficult test. So we want to keep our eye on which kids we want to kind of get moving in this direction, but that test is still pretty difficult. So we have to make sure that in Algebra 2, we really want to look at our curriculum there and make sure that students are going to be ready for this. So I think this is going to have, bringing this in is going to have positive effects on our curriculum from top to bottom. There's been lots of conversations about the acceptance of colleges in this credit. As far as high achieving, competitive STEM majors, engineering majors, I think the sentiment is that those schools are not going to accept students moving to an engineering program or computer science program and giving them pre-calculus college credit. That's an expectation in a lot of those STEM fields. So that's not necessarily the target. The target may be more about those students who are going to go into humanities and want to be able to get that college credit math taken care of while they're in high school. So there's lots of discussion about where this course would actually be situated in our program of studies and the target audience. We've had lots of really good discussion about that. And that kind of leads into the pathway for our highest achieving math students. And talking to the other schools in the county, there is an issue here because we think of this AP moniker that this is our highest class. But what we want to do is we want to pull in these other students and give them an opportunity. So how do we separate those two groups of students without then watering down our highest ability students into a class that we're gearing towards students who are not going to be math STEM majors? So that's a lot of the conversations that we've been working through. So I do want to talk just a little about how that course would get scheduled. So there are a couple options that we would have. One would be a 1 credit semester course. So that's something that would meet every day for 84 minutes. The issue with that is it could start in the beginning of the school year and it ends in January 21st. So for these students that we want to take that next step and get them into an AP math class and make those steps, to have a course that ends in January as their first AP course ever that they don't take the test till May, that was something that concerned us. And likewise, having a second semester where it starts in January 22nd and goes every day for 84 minutes, is there enough time to really cover all of that material in a way that gets them prepared? Because we're trying to pull kids up that may have never taken this course before. So we had concerns about that. So at the end, we decided that maybe the best bet, and what other schools were doing, was this would be a 1 credit year-long AB course. So this would be something that would meet every other day for 84 minutes, starting in September and going up through the test. And an advantage to that, in talking with the high school people about scheduling and bringing in block scheduling, there are other courses that run that way, so that would be an opportunity to dovetail, because if a student takes another 1 course that meets every other day, they would have they need something else to run the other day to make that work, so to fulfill schedule. So that would be a possibility. The negative side of that would be to run it as a year-long course. Now students are going to be taking that whole year, taking 1 class, and now that takes away from the flexibility in their schedule, that they now have to give up an entire year and only get 1 class done, where block scheduling could take those students, or the high achieving students who want to move on, to be able to take 2 separate classes that year. Maybe I would move on. I'm going to move on to this slide for just a second. That this was a scenario that we wanted to avoid as well, that we didn't want our students taking algebra in 8th grade and then have no other option but to take geometry and algebra 2 in their sophomore year, so that they could then take a full year AP pre-calculus class in 10th grade, and then AB in 11th grade and BC in 12th grade. So we wanted to avoid that, because we want to be able to give our students options, get them into the high school, start maturing, deciding on what careers they may want to pursue, and then be able to make their decisions, not have to make them when they're in 8th grade scheduling for 9th grade.
What would they take if, like, before, if they were taking like the algebra and the geometry, what would they be taking in 9th grade then? If they got that in middle school, what would their 9th grade course option be? Would it be could they possibly take calculus as a 9th grader?
No.
Okay.
Give me 1 second, I'll get to that. I have a slide with that possibility,
Okay.
I think that'll answer that question. And then I did just talk about the pros and cons of the AP creates an issue as well because students may look at that as we talk in the county and how you place those. We're trying to get these students to step up to take that AP class, but are we going to have students, our highest achieving math students, taking the AP just for the name and for the weighting on it? And that's something that we really have to have those discussions about how that would fit into the program. So we kind of wanted to keep those separate. And one of our considerations was to make this AP pre-calculus just a junior-senior course, because our highest achieving students are going to want to take pre-calculus earlier on. So that would kind of keep them out of that. But we know that's an issue where, you know, why are you keeping a kid out of the class just because of what grade they're in? That didn't really make sense. So through all of those hours of conversation, we believe the best option in the short term is to actually run our AP pre-calculus course and continue to run our honors pre-calculus course. The AP pre-calculus course would be the full year, get those students ready, try to move some students up into that class, give them the whole year to prepare right up to the test, and keep our honors pre-calculus class as a semester base. Get that done. That's not geared towards the test necessarily, and they can take that in the 18 weeks. So that's what we're looking for. Now, maybe to answer your question, I talked about what we don't want to have is that situation, and maybe is this the slide that we're talking about? So students would take, now they have the option of either semester of freshman year taking honors geometry, and either semester in sophomore year. Oh, no, this is not, sorry. I have to be careful here. This is not what we're looking to do now. This is something we're talking long-term as these students move up that are currently in 6th grade to when they get to take algebra in 8th grade, or in 8th grade, how they are going to move through our program and keep those students challenged and at the highest level. So what we would want to do, and this is years to come, this isn't now, we're not looking for approval on this now, we just want to let you know that we're having these discussions about our highest students and where they're going to be and how we're going to get them to reach their goals. So if they were taking algebra in 8th grade, the idea of in 11th grade, because we don't want this situation, right? In 11th grade, making our pre-calc honors class, because that pre-calc class is a lot of review of Algebra 2 things and a lot of things that they're going to do again in calculus, to make that a half-credit semester or half-credit course that would run in the first quarter or any quarter. And that would allow them to be able to have the flexibility in their 9th and 10th grade to take geometry and Algebra 2 and not double up. And then in 11th grade, when they usually would take AP Calculus the entire year, or the first 3 quarters of the year, we would allow them to take pre-calculus and then roll right into AP Calculus AB, and that would still allow them to take AP Calculus BC and Calculus 3 in their senior year. So they would still be able to reach all their goals that students have before. Also keep in mind that as we move to block schedulings, there's 4 more. We used to have 7 periods during the school year, now we have 8. So there are an additional 4 classes that students can take starting this year that they couldn't take in the past. So does that answer that question?
So yes, but then also just with the community members' comments, what does that mean then for, because if I'm looking at this, and maybe I just don't understand, it looks almost like they'd have to wait another year. Like I know they could like double up for the block scheduling, but it looks like it's kind of pushed back a year. Is there an option for it to still be offered in the middle school realm, so when they get to 10th grade, instead of having to possibly take the Algebra 2, they could potentially take a pre-calc?
Well,
That's the next agenda item anyway.
They could right now, like they could take, in 9th grade, they can take geometry honors in their freshman year, or the first semester, and take Algebra 2 in their second.
Okay.
Yeah, theoretically, I wouldn't encourage that. Theoretically, students that are right now, that we're talking about the middle school, if they wanted to, they could finish Calc 3 in their junior year if they wanted to. I would not encourage, I don't know why you
But
would
it's
need to get
possible.
through Calc 3 as a junior and then not take calculus as your senior if you're going to be a STEM major, but it is possible.
Okay. Okay.
And again, that's something that we're talking about now with the math department and what we would have to do, especially in our Algebra 2 classes, Algebra 2 honors, to make sure that students are ready to be able to, we would adjust some of the curriculum moving forward and set some goals so that they'd be ready to take pre-calc as a half credit course, and then dovetail that in with AP Calculus AB.
Okay, so as part of the rollout of this, I'm assuming how to transition, like the example of the student who is in 8th grade and is already taking geometry, what do they do next year?
So students are in 7th grade right now taking Algebra 1.
Right.
Next year would take geometry in 8th grade.
But are there students right now in 8th grade taking geometry?
There are students right now.
So they still have an option for 9th grade, right? Like, what would they take in 9th grade then?
Algebra 2.
Okay.
You're on the current trajectory.
Yeah.
Right, but then moving forward.
Yeah,
Right,
those
that's-
students,
that's what
their
we're talking
freshmen
about.
could come in and take Algebra 2 next year in the first semester and pre-calculus in the second semester, and they could take Calc AB as sophomores. Again, I don't know why, what the advantage is and where they're trying to get to in their career goals.
So you're not asking us to approve
No.
anything?
No,
At
just
all
AP
with
pre-calculus. What I would like to approve is the last bullet, AP pre-calculus added to the program of studies as a year-long AB course that will run alongside our honors pre-calculus. That would be a 1-credit course, but only run be semester-based to give students the most options there.
I
We're going to,
understand.
I'm sorry.
I just had one more question. Could you go back to the second schedule slide? That one.
This one?
So in this one,
And this.
is it that a 9th grader takes geometry the first half of the year and does not take any math the second
Correct.
half?
Or they could just take it the second half of the year. But
Okay. I do feel like
Yeah.
you lose math if you don't use it. Like, so I do have some concerns about that model, but I know that's not what we're talking about today. But I feel like taking all that time off.
yeah, that's a big
And
block
then-
scheduling philosophical question. I
Yeah.
mean, the research, when you take off the 3 months of the summer, whether you're taking off 3 months or you're taking off 9 months, research says the
Okay.
amount of time to get back, your bearings back is the same.
It's
You
the
stop
same
playing piano
catch-up
for 3 months, or
speed.
you stop playing for a year.
Where's the actual program improvement?
Oh,
There's an actual program improvement proposal for this course.
Okay.
This was just the explanation, and if anybody else had any questions about the middle school math sequence, and that's what
Yeah.
Mr. Garsh was trying to answer.
sorry. So just to finish on that AP pre-calc there, so we do have teachers that have already been trained and enthusiastic, they've done that.
When you say train.
They train the AP Institute, they've done that, 2 teachers.
Yeah.
They also, as far as resources go, they are perfectly content with what we have in place right now. That so it wouldn't be, we're gonna look to see how this goes. That is one of our older textbooks, but they feel that what we have is sufficient and they would want to, they could play that course, so it's not like a new textbook that's coming next year along with this. The curriculum is, they've looked at that, so there's very little that needs to be done there. Have asked for some hours there to be able to put that new curriculum into Atlas. But it is very similar to the honors pre-calculus curriculum. It's only, there are a couple things and it's geared more towards that AP exam.
Is there any concerns with it being a full year versus like in the block, like either from teachers or if for students, if they take that full course, the AB, instead of, because then that kind of takes away time to take away another math, or there's been no, everyone's on board with that, your recommendation?
Having
full year.
AP pre-calc be a year-long AB
Right.
course? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they think that is the best option, especially for, if this is, our intent is to reach this student, right?
Mhm.
We have some students in mind that we want to move them in that direction, and it could be a student taking their first AP class. I think that's the one that they start in the beginning of the year. They have time throughout the year to digest. It's not like every day we're 84 minutes,
Right.
and goes right up through the exam is the best way
We
to
think
approach
that positions our students to perform well in the AP exam as well.
Okay.
Having that full year.
Instead of like half.
Right.
Exactly.
And then how many sections would we be able to offer for that? I mean, I guess it depends who all signs up for it.
Right, so that's what we'll have to see as far as, there's a question on here about where you have to add sections of this. Hopefully we do. Hopefully there's at least one section more of students that aren't stopping after Algebra 2 that want to move forward.
But sometimes that is something sometimes I hear from community members, like they want to take all the AP courses, but then let's say the one AP course, there's only one section during this time, and then that's the same thing for the other AP, and then it's like really like, you're playing Tetris trying to fit it all in. So that's, I get it, that's the
It's
tough
very
part.
true, and that's the conversations we've had, especially with the county and talking to other schools, about the AP name. I know one person said, this would be great if they just could take the AP, it would be much easier if they just didn't call it AP, because that just adds this other thing about students wanting to take an AP course with their other 6 AP courses.
Right.
And that might not be who we're actually targeting here.
Mhm.
So that's some of our challenges, to see how many students are going to be interested. And then it will also, in talking to Mr. Hughes about the scheduling, about what that dovetails with, like AP seminar class. I think that runs that's an AB? Yeah. So it would dovetail nicely with that. But you'll have to look to see the scheduling, how many. I would hope there's at least one extra section, but I can't guarantee that.
And you may have covered this already, so something like pre-calculus, if you're going in as like a math major, like someone, would a college give you credit for that?
No.
So it's more for students who are looking to kind of feel like a Gen Ed credit in mathematics.
Yeah, I think that's where, from the county, I think everyone had a consensus that was the best place for that, is students who wanted to be able to get their college math taken care of. So
They don't
that
wanna
in
take
college-
any more math.
They don't want to take any more math once they leave here, and that they.
So just to be clear, we already offer honors pre-calc,
Correct.
adding AP pre-calc,
Yes,
and that increases our AP offering.
correct.
Okay. Okay. Are we ready to move on to middle school math?
Yeah, I just here to answer any questions that you might have about that.
Any other
I
questions?
spent a lot of time using it.
So I did have a question.
Sure.
And maybe I just wasn't clear on it last time. So I am excited that with 6th grade, and I have an example of my son that went through it, 6th grade, what we're offering, we're proposing, is that they won't just be, all the 5th graders won't be put into just one 6th grade math. And that they would be moved, for example, something like a advanced 6th grade, like a pre-algebra.
I don't know if I would call it pre-algebra, but there would be 2 levels of 6. So right now, all students are in 6th grade math together.
Yes.
And now, right now, we have them in 6th grade. The next year, they're in 3 different levels
Yes.
at 7th grade. So now what we're looking to, as they move into 5th grade, have them in 2 levels of 6th grade math.
So then in 7th grade and 8th grade, just like someone in the community spoke, and with my own son, he did then algebra and then geometry.
Yes.
Will those, I know that there's differences, will those 2 still be offered?
No. Algebra only in 8th grade.
So what happens then to the children, like for example, my son who took algebra, where is he placed? If he was taking algebra in he's ready for algebra in 7th grade, that this no longer is going to be offered, where will he be placed? And then if they're not offering geometry 8th, where will?
What will you take then?
So if we had a student who is in 6th grade and doing very well,
Yes.
in 7th grade, we'll have our let's see, this isn't. So our pre-algebra honors course. So what we're doing there is that course is now, our top students in 7th grade will be taking pre-algebra honors. And that's where we're taking and looking at our new science curriculum, looking at interdisciplinary units there. We're looking at probability statistics, adding those in. Coding, data science is all going to be in that 7th grade. A lot of things that we would never do before because of time, that we'll be able to put into that 7th grade curriculum.
Oh, okay, I understand that, but it's still like the kids that are in algebra, will they be challenged? If right now you're offering algebra in 7th grade, so if those children are going to be going into pre-algebra honors, will they still be challenged?
That's our goal. That's why we're developing a course that is going to be rigorous. I would hope that course would be, and I think what's going to happen from what I'm hearing, that we're going to make that course as rigorous as we can, but it's going to be different things they've never been exposed to before.
So new.
Yeah, we have no interest in just taking the same thing that they were doing and just going over that again.
Because there is then that concern of then, so that in 8th grade, there isn't geometry. So.
That's when they would take the Algebra
That's when they
1,
take
that's
the
when they would take
Algebra
the
1
Keystone
honors.
exam as well. And we'd make sure that in 7th grade also that they're hitting all the eligible content for our PSSAs as well, because that was something in the past that when we were putting students in algebra, we were saying, okay, we think that we can get you ready for the Keystone, and we have to rush through that, and we don't focus on the things that we need to get them ready for in the PSSA.
So you're saying it's still, I guess my concern is for the parents, like my son's already in Algebra 2 right now, so
What
then
grade is he in, sorry?
he's in 9th grade. So he wouldn't be in Algebra 2 in 9th grade.
If he wanted to take geometry in the first semester and algebra 2 in the second semester,
But, so is this changing because you want them, I guess I'm confused
May
why
I
we're
chime
not.
in for a second?
Yes.
So I think this gets to the heart of the question. I think the question at the heart of a lot of what the community is asking is why is it that we feel that it is necessary to delay the start of this track? So whereas previously would have allowed a 7th grader into algebra, why is it that we now feel it is necessary to push it to 8th grade and to start with pre-algebra in 7th and to delay that track for those students?
so I think it comes down to, we have to think about the reasons why students were in algebra in 7th grade to begin with. And the reason is because from the top of that slide, if you weren't in algebra in 7th grade, then you couldn't get the geometry in 8th grade and algebra 2 in 9th grade and pre-calculus in 10th grade and calc AB in 11th grade and calc BC in 12th grade. So there was no way for you to get to the top of our program unless in 6th grade you decided that my child needs to be here because just in case he needs to be in the best spot to get there. And because of that, what we ended up doing was all of the things that we learned as educators from the very beginning about interdisciplinary units and project-based learning and all of these other skills that students have, the coding skills and all of those things, we didn't have time for because we were in a rush in 7th grade to get those kids on this pathway. That's the only pathway that was available to get them to the top of the mountain. But now, and the reason it's being done now, it's not just this is a brand new idea, it's the block scheduling has provided us some of those opportunities for students. Our highest students can wait until they are in and decide, oh, I'm a 9th grader, I'm a 10th grader, I really like Algebra 2 honors, I'm really into this, and now I can get to the Calc BC and Calc 3. And other students, we had so many students that got into algebra in 7th grade, and then by the time they got to like algebra 2, like, yeah, this isn't really it. And now they were done, they were taking personal finance in 11th grade and they were done. Yet we have them in a class in 7th grade where we were deciding these 7th graders are our very best, most advanced kids. And less than 50, over the last 3 years, less than half of those students actually scored advanced. So we have all of these students that we've decided are advanced in 7th grade that are not scoring advanced. And the reason is because, well, we think they could be advanced, maybe someday they will be advanced and we need to get them in 7th grade.
So what do we do for the children, that are advanced? So it's 50% aren't, but those 50% that are.
We are going to provide them with opportunities that they're not seeing elsewhere in the county for what they can accomplish in 7th grade and seeing what other things are out there and building a love of mathematics and seeing all the other things that are available to them and tying that in with our new science curriculum and our new way of thinking and our new way of assessing students.
Do we not have the resources to offer both?
Both, right.
The issue there is if there is an algebra in 7th grade, we are going to be right where we were, and we're going to have that full of students who are in algebra in 7th grade because the other kids are in algebra in 7th grade, and I need to be in algebra in 7th grade.
Could it not be based on like a recommendation from a teacher based on what their math grade was in 6th grade?
I actually might make a different suggestion than a recommendation.
Okay.
if that is something that you would be open to, of having a pathway that still maintains that traditional path as well, would it be possible to make it something that is only tested into those who are in the 98th, 99th percentile in their scores on our universal screeners and things like that, to make sure that they have those abilities? Not because there are some times where we as a teacher make a judgment call that we think a student is prepared for something and we're wrong. There are times where we as parents want to believe that our child is capable of all of these great things, but then we miss out on foundational skills that those children need. But there are also students that truly are there and ready for that challenge and ready for that progress. So I guess that's my question then, is there an opportunity or an option to preserve that path for those that can prove competency on those earlier skills that they need mastery of? Because I know that a part of this also delves down into the scores that across the state, we are seeing 7th and 8th graders in algebra who struggle to pass the keystone. That across the state, we are seeing 7th and 8th graders who have been pushed into higher math courses, but are achieving at a basic or proficient on PSSA test results rather than the advanced test results we expect to see from our most accelerated students.
And I think you're talking about everything that we have been seeing. That is what we see. We have kids going into Algebra 1 and they don't score well on a PSSA, right?
Yep.
Because they haven't been taught those skills. They're not in that class. We're trying to make sure that every middle schooler is taught the eligible content, right? Even if I am a higher performer. We were excited about this because we've been talking about this for 10 years. We never could do it because we couldn't do that to any student because they didn't have the opportunity at high school. And then the conversation, as Mike talked about, was to develop a really new, exciting course for the high-flying math students. So mathematically thinking students, right, we would provide them with those kinds of opportunities that they don't have now. And I know it's different, and it's what we've done in the past, and it's what other schools do. And while that conversation is had here, it's also had in other districts around the county saying, oh yeah, we like that idea, we want to develop that too. We are not in any way trying to hold any student back. This is to give more time to develop mathematical thinking so that I'm going to not stress out about it, I'm really going to enjoy it, so more students take higher level courses than they do now. Because that statistic that Mike talks about has been here for a long time. The number of students who do take 7th grade algebra to go on to your highest level math classes is less than 50%. And it always is that way. So that is really what this is about. This is not to take away opportunities for any student at all. And as Mike and his team develop that math course in 7th grade, I do think that maybe people will start thinking about that's an advantage for kids.
Is it possible that the naming of the course is throwing people off pre-algebra?
Yeah, we talked
Oh,
about that too.
I'm sure it is
Yes.
because
If it's
we've
not
gone
fully
through
encompassing all the content you're gonna add?
Yes, I would agree. We've had many conversations about naming conventions and semantics, and it's flipped between, but is accelerated better than honor? I would agree that that.
So maybe we take a look at the course name, but also could you speak to, for the board, the collaboration you've had with the teachers, administrators, the building principals, and about this sequence right here?
It's been amazingly positive. The one term that the middle school teachers often use, well, I guess even our high school meeting as well, about students being burned out. And that, when you hear that, that's kind of, as a math person, someone like lives and dies for math. To hear that's rough, that students are just like, by the time they get here, they're done because they've been pushed so hard through it. Another, Dr. Scheid talked about 50, it's actually more like 25% as far as our students who have, our 7th graders who then take Calc BC, our highest math. So we have like, the last couple of years, it's been over 100 every year in 7th grade algebra. But every year our Calc BC is at like 23 or something like that.
So one section worth of kids.
Yeah.
So just a couple other questions or two. So it's still possible with the proposed progression that a 10th grader could finish 10th grade and have taken pre-calc, because they could do geometry first or algebra 2 first semester, pre-calc second semester. Even if because we're talking about the pre-calc AP, but there's still going to be regular pre-calc
Right.
classes also. So if that's a student who, well, all right, we can talk about I'm trying not to confuse the two things. I feel like what it looks like, and I know all the work that's gone into this, and I understand like the people who will see it through the end isn't everyone you identify in 7th grade. When I look at it though, what it looks like is you split out the high performers in pre-algebra, made a lower class for the lower performers, and got rid of algebra 1. That's what it looks like when you look at this. Like, so the kids who were in the algebra 1, it doesn't look like there's a space for them anymore. So you're talking about putting them in pre-algebra honors. How is that? I'm not sure how that's going to fix the issue. Are we pushing kids now into pre-algebra honors because they did decent in math 6 and they feel like they're better than math 7 accelerated? I should be pre-algebra honors. Like, I don't know if we just took the problem, just shifted it down.
I think to simplify it, the problem that's being addressed here is that 7th grade algebra, we had too many students in there who weren't ready, and we were skipping over too many of the things that we all have, educators have learned about what's the best way for students to learn and prepare them for their future, and we've skipped over that for the sake of time, that we don't have time, we have to get them there. So we're looking to use that time that we now have to be able to give them opportunities they never had before. And I think Dr. Scheid was talking about, our goal is to make that pre-algebra honors class, and maybe, as you said, maybe the name is part of the problem, to be something that's really the goal for students, that people are really excited about, and they're coming out, and that was the greatest thing that I ever had, and that was very challenging. You know, I realize that the last thing we want are bored students, but I don't see that. I mean, we're putting that together to make that as rigorous as we can.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a really good program. What happened to gifted math in middle school? We don't do that anymore?
There is no gifted
Right, I think they always get pulled.
math.
Yeah.
Through elementary.
There are gifted teachers who push into math classes.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So are you thinking, for what you were saying with the algebra, like there's 50% that were really doing well, excelling, and then the other 50 were struggling? With this, are you looking at the ones that are struggling would be like the Math 7 accelerated, and the ones that really have it, that are like, I know what I'm doing, that's more of the pre-algebra honors?
I think as we looked at this, we were talking about that Math 6 accelerated, and looking at the students who are scoring advanced on all of that. That's the students that we're putting in pre-algebra honors for that course.
Because that's my concern, is that that the kids that are doing well in algebra, even without pre-algebra, they're just really doing well, that they're not going to be bored like my 6th grader was in regular math. I think that's the big concern.
Our goal is probably to get them to experience things they never experienced before, and came home that today I learned this, I'm just from my daughter's experience where she's in data science and geographic things, that we have the ability to teach them and show them that even exists, but she didn't know about that until she got to college. Those experiences, and data science and ArcGIS is kind of a data visualization and mapping kind of software that ties in with 7th grade. We have geography is taught in 7th grade. So there's an opportunity to use these tools that we have, that people have spent that have careers with, that our high school students never see, because we didn't have time in 7th grade, because we needed to get them on the train.
So that's all brand new content, never been taught before in one of our courses. This pre-algebra honors, more well-rounded course is brand new content.
The coding aspects, data science, Python in there, project-based learning that's tied in with our Twig resources.
So I think this has been asked, but if we looked at the bottom, the proposed math progression, so for 7th grade, if you added a 4th option, which would be Algebra 1, does that solve anybody's issues? What would pre-algebra honors be compared to Algebra 1?
It would be, let's sit down and let's get ready for a Keystone test and focus on that and not all the other things that we want to take the opportunity to experience, our 7th graders to experience.
And how will they pass the Keystone with the pre-algebra honors?
Well, then
They don't take it.
they'll take an 8th grade.
Oh, okay, got it, right.
They get algebra in 8th grade.
Got it, okay.
It is thinking differently, we know that. This is thinking outside the box, this is something nobody's done. We have such a great opportunity to build that course. And I think that we all do. We all think that the students will really love it and engage with math in different ways. And yeah, they can go into 7th grade algebra and they can get their, right, the equations and everything, but that's not really deep mathematical thinking to the degree that we have an opportunity to provide for the students.
I think what's hanging some people up, and myself too, is I feel like we don't have a space for the really high performers in 7th grade now. And so we're not, I don't know if that equates to offering Algebra 1 to them or a higher level pre-algebra class. That's like,
Or they go into an 8th grade class instead if they are, you know what I mean, if you're in 7th grade and you really do excel for who,
Then what would
even
they
if it's
do?
just one.
Because they couldn't take 9th grade,
I mean, I do know, I mean, there's all these scenarios, and it could only be one child, 'cause I know when my son went, they bused one child to the high school to take his math. So I know, and I don't know, it could just be one child, it could be none. I'm just kind of wondering, even if it is one, what happens? It's just like what Leah's saying, we want to make sure that we are.
but you're gonna have
Giving.
children coming from gifted, from elementary school even, that even as part of that, they're doing like problem solving things, and they're gonna tear through this. Like really just tear through it. And so that's what I feel like we need to make sure there's a path for them.
I think we're not on the same page on that.
Sure.
Because what we are thinking is that that top student, the advanced students, is who that
Okay.
course is catered to. We're thinking that that would be far more challenging than the algebra course.
Okay.
So it really is targeted for
Oh,
the
I'm
highest
not even
achievers.
talking about making it back to Algebra 1. I'm even talking even with that course. There's going to be kids who do that course really well and kids who don't. Yeah, I mean, that's any course, I guess.
There's
I don't know,
students
yeah.
that do really well in like right now
Yeah.
in 8th grade algebra. We could find 1 or 2 students that's an outlier.
So is Brad's idea of testing in not, you don't feel like that's an option? If there was 1 or 2 algebra classes that a student had to test into?
I think our vision is to provide something to all of our students, and by allowing that now, they're skipping over these opportunities to get where. Where is the advantage of that 7th grader taking algebra? Where are they getting to that they couldn't get to otherwise?
And I agree with that because I feel like with block, there's opportunities for the students who are really, really interested in math to end up at the end of 10th grade exactly where they would have ended up before. Like, I understand that component of it. I think it's just a concern that we're slowing them down at, like, the kids who are the most interested. We don't want it to look like we're slowing them down at just like a critical time in their life. I love the idea of your course too. I think there's a lot of aspects of math that are really interesting to students that
And
might
you just,
not
the
like
kids that are really interested, that's
Yeah.
the kid we want to grab and that we don't want to burn out by now it's cranking through and getting ready for algebra and Keystone review to get them ready for that test where if they're interested in, they may have interest all over the place. And we need to find what those interests are specifically. And that's an opportunity, that's our last chance to expose them to a wide variety of, what the world has to offer before they get into algebra, geometry, algebra, calculus.
And middle school is where kids decide they're going to go into STEM. It doesn't happen in high school, it happens in middle school. So.
Thank you. I know this was a lot of work. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? Because we're getting emails as we speak.
We did talk about having parent nights at the middle schools to really listen to parents, and maybe if they didn't see this and they don't have all of the details, that we would be able to speak to them at each school.
I wonder with some of those, the course that you're saying they'll be having new things that they haven't seen before. Maybe if there were some examples of some of the things that would be included in the course that maybe like wasn't, that would be new to them, that would feel more enriching, then maybe that
Good
would,
idea.
you know, I don't know, calm,
I
make
was
it feel like.
gonna say, before our next meeting, I think, or before we move on this, I think it would behoove us to see two things. One is the data to back it up. So I'm in middle schools. I know what the middle school math data looks like across the state, but I know that our general audience doesn't. I know that there are the board members that don't know what the struggle is for many teachers when we sit there and we get these 8th grade PSSA scores or these 7th grade PSSA scores where students who should be achieving at an incredibly high level because they are in these classes are not. So I think it would behoove all of us to be able to see that data, for the community to be able to see that data and why the data leads us to these decision-making processes. But I also think it would be a really good idea to present in a concrete way. What are some of these other things? Because it's a mindset shift for Americans. So much of our math is set up with this idea that we have to get to calculus because that's always been the progression, because we've been trying to push kids towards the rocket sciences and physics and things like that for such an incredibly long time. Whereas in many other societies, we talk about it as maths. We add that plural S, because there is a just vast quantity of different math applications where kids, because we've always had this very traditional path, may sometimes just see themselves as not math people. And that's absolutely untrue. Math has practical applications. Math can be fun. Math can be enjoyable. Math has so many different applications in so many different fields today that students, you're right, they don't get to explore because we have constantly had this constant set of, I must get to pre-algebra, I must get to algebra, I must get to geometry, I must get to algebra 2 because I have to make it to calculus. So I think it would be beneficial for us as well as the community to get a really concrete idea of what some of these types of project-based learning you'd like to do with this course would be, as well as what are some of the specific other things to which students would be exposed. So you mentioned tying in with geometry with ArcGIS and things like that. Those are incredibly cool things. But unless you are in geospatial studies or you've taken recent grad classes in new educational technologies, you probably don't know about some of the different applications that are out there towards interdisciplinary learning in the mathematics. So if we could give a demonstration and give some of these concrete ideas both to the other board members as well as the community, I think that might behoove us as well. And for those that I think will still want the traditional path, to at least explore what our options are for leaving something in place for those who might want that traditional path.
Yeah, so one parent is saying that geometry in 8th grade was a good fit for her daughter. So with the new progression, that would be a year later, right? And would they be as challenged in Algebra 1 honors in 8th grade? I mean, it's different, completely different math, right? Versus geometry.
Yeah, that Algebra 1 course, if they were in the past taking that in 7th grade, yes, in 8th grade, then we would have to look at the rigor that's involved in that course, but I would think that would be just as challenging. We can make that just as challenging.
So you would like us to come back at the next curriculum committee meeting with additional information for this proposal?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Final agenda item is Dr. Scheid with a review of request for consideration of resource material procedures.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to review what the process is first. So anyone from the community, any staff member can request for a current resource material to be reconsidered. They would then submit that to our superintendent. Then that request goes to the reconsideration committee, and a reconsideration committee reviews the resource together. There is information gathered during that process, with the ultimate goal of that is to come to a decision on whether or not we should keep the resource in the district or remove it. So the criteria for that selection is educational significance and relevance, artistic quality and/or literary style, age appropriate and suitable for the developmental level of the student who'll be using them, pedagogical interest, content is comprehensive, well organized and unbiased, and that is what the committee looks at through the resources. Once the committee comes up with a determination and answers the questions, then that is submitted through me to the superintendent. The superintendent has the authority to remove a book from the shelves of the school library during the request for reconsideration process if the superintendent determines the book to be in clear violation of the process for screening and selection. Then, of course, at the conclusion, the book or the classroom collection, if it's determined to be school appropriate, we would just put it back. So that's the current process. Now, the books that were reconsidered under former policy 109 are the ones listed right up there on the screen. The first one you see is identical, but that was from 2023. And that is the only one that we have that was reconsidered. And that book remains at the high school. And you do need parent guardian consent prior to checking it out, but it is at the high school. The next, 1, 2, 3, 4, one of them is a book, Blue is the Warmest Color. That was considered, was not age appropriate, nor were these next 3 series, the Berserk, Cantarella, and then Soul Eater. They were all recommended to be removed for not being age appropriate with sexualized content, not sex, sexualized content. So that already took place, so they've been removed from the library. These are the next set of books that we had to reconsider. And then we have Assassination Classroom. That was recommended to be removed under the criteria for selection because this is new policy 109. A Stolen Life is, we recommended that that should remain in the high school library, but that also would require parental consent, but that book will not be removed. And then American Psycho, sex is a funny word. I do want to say something about sex is a funny word. There's absolutely nothing wrong with sex is a funny word, that book. It's just a resource book. It's not a book that's even written for kids to take out of the library. It's meant to be a resource for adults to use with students. So that was recommended to be removed as a student book. And Ghost Houses. So they are the books that have been reviewed under new policy 109, and they are the recommendations from the committee. And then the 22 books that were originally removed from the library in 22-23 were reviewed by our current librarian at the high school. The recommendation from our librarian were to return to the library Looking for Alaska, Sold Out of Darkness, Last Night at the Telegraph Club, Allegedly, and Beloved. The recommendation to remove or to stay out of the library, because they are not in the library, are that list. And then our librarian has 2 other books Cirque du Freak and Perks of Being a Wallflower, that she is recommending go to the committee. So they will go to the committee for review, and then we will review those books, the committee will make a recommendation, and that's how the process works.
Kathy, can I ask, well, I have a couple questions, but there's 15 books on this list.
Is it because of series? Maybe some
Oh,
of those
yeah.
books are
series,
included.
is that why? Okay.
So you will be seeing 2 more books come to the reconsideration committee.
And then my other question is the return to library. I'm not familiar with all of them. I am familiar with a couple of them. What is the process to get, what differentiates needing parent consent?
I think I missed the last part.
What's the criteria for needing parent consent?
So the
and
criteria
just
that was
not
met,
needing parent consent?
yeah, for here, is these books were reviewed by our high school library, and she made the recommendation that none of those books should require parental consent. That is her professional opinion, a recommendation. And I have actually spoken to her about this. She would not recommend a book for the library that she thought needed parental consent. And so she does not believe any of them do. Whereas what you saw prior on the other list, they were reviewed by the committee. These were not.
Because I've agreed and been really pleased with the books that she has recommended, but I can tell you for certain, at least 2, if not 3 of those, I've read enough that I would definitely not want my daughter reading them. So what would be the process would we request a review committee and then see if we got parental consent?
Yeah, it's the same process. If you want the committee to review a book, you would follow the same process and fill out that form and send it to Mr. Barrios. And then the reconsideration committee would review it.
How does parental consent work? Are these books like hidden somewhere? I didn't think that was possible when
No,
this
I think
policy
they're
was being
in the
passed.
library, and then when a student checks it out, there's an alert in the system.
Interesting. All right, so I'm going to echo some things I heard from the community on this. I respect the librarian and admin's work in this, but I do feel like we're missing the mark quite a bit. We seem out of touch with what kids are interested in. My biggest concern is like library books aren't the same as textbooks. They're for children to read voluntarily, and voluntary reading has just over and over again proven how much it improves a child's mental health, their academic rigor, empathy. It makes them better citizens in the country. And there'll perpetually be a gap between this generation of students and what a community finds acceptable. And our job is to bridge that gap, not fearmonger community stuff. So I went to the top 10 districts in Pennsylvania and searched their libraries. Every single one of these is in at least 1. Perks of Being a Wallflower was in 9. The Court of Thorn and Roses was in 8 of them. I feel like we're missing opportunities here to engage children in voluntarily reading. I went up to my daughter's room. A lot of these books I apparently have bought for her, which I have no problem with it. But now I'm even more concerned because if these are what kids want to read, like if we talk about the Hoover novels, It Ends With Us, all those, most of the high school kids are reading that. And I feel like now we've created an unfair situation where families who can afford to buy this for their kids, these kids can have it, they're interested, the gap keeps widening, and kids who aren't, I'm worried we're missing the mark here of really engaging our students in reading for pleasure, recognizing what resonates with them in their lives.
I understand, okay, so I understand that, but that is such like let's just push the dollar. There's a lot of kids who their parents can't afford to have internet to do virtual reading, and their parents can't afford to drive their kids to the library. We have an opportunity to have the kids, so then we can mark let's put all 22 books back in and mark them for opt-out.
I'd be great with that,
Okay, so that's what we should do then. Put all 22 books back in and have them marked for
So,
all.
but I feel like you're missing the point of what our job is up here. Like, our job isn't just to represent what we think the community wants, because it really is just our opinions. There's nothing else backing that up. What we think the community wants. The community is perpetually behind education. It's impossible to get us all on the same
But it's
page.
also not the job of just your opinion to be the opinion
No,
of
it's
everybody
our
else's
job,
as
though,
a
to
community.
bridge the gap.
No, it is
And
not our job to bridge. Leah, most of the kids in the school could not get into a movie theater and watch.
Right.
So
correct.
Cider House Rules came out 39 years ago, and suddenly it's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people
Well,
also
Explain
were
to me
not
how
aware
after
of the fact that they were
39
actually
years,
in the
this is
library.
now a problem.
There's
It's probably
a lot of
always
people
been a
didn't even know
problem.
that they were even in. These 22 books, if we would look back though, when we first originally put in the books to be reviewed, there were 13, Pennridge only had 8. I'm not even aware of the full list of the 22 and why those were pulled to begin with. However, okay.
Can we get to policy 903?
Right.
Can we get that next?
Right, interruptions. So, my point is still, I can't get past the fact that, yes, like, I've even had some of my friends that would say, like, allegedly is a great book, and, we agree to disagree. That's the great part about trying to bridge the gap with community. However, the scene from one of the parts in the book, if it was in a movie, it would be considered a rated R movie, and you would not be able to go in without parental consent. So if we're gonna go with what Mr.
What is
Kaufman
that based
will say,
on?
if like the explicit sexualness of it.
You have no idea how they would even portray it in a movie. Like,
Huh? You what?
how you have no idea how they would even portray that in a movie. Like, portray it? Yeah, I'm sorry. Portray
Yeah.
It's pretty clear. It's
Yeah,
sex,
it is. It's
so
very
it would have to
specific.
be sex.
But
They're gonna show that.
But this is what I would like, if we're gonna do the alert thing, I would like it if there were like examples of parts from the books that had those specific parts, not just like a ding alert, like this is why there's an alert on it, that we need your consent for it, and have those specific examples in there. I'm sorry, and that's, like you said, you went to your daughter's room and you bought a lot of those books, that's great, but like, that's where I feel like our responsibility is not for us to say what we think is right for those students. A lot of parents have
You're doing
different,
that.
a lot of parents have different opinions, and you would be doing it if you would be putting them in there. You'd be going against other, so there has to be, if we're gonna do the parental consent piece, and then
No,
make sure
I'm
that
not a
there's
fan
more.
of the parental consent piece, honestly.
All I'm
either.
saying
We're not
is,
forcing
there should be
kids to read
specific
the books.
examples
Yeah.
with why it is alerted, because we have minors. We have children coming in and 9th graders, they're 14 years old. And again, like, that's fine if other people are comfortable with that with their own children, but there's a lot of parents that aren't.
And we have
And you
to
have to
remember,
respect
But what's
that.
being talked
Because
about,
it is
though,
voluntary
you're
reading.
talking
It's
about
not required.
parents, and I understand that, like, parents have every right to work with the librarian around what they feel is appropriate and not appropriate for their children. What has been done with this policy in the past, and now I'm worried it's residual effects, is this fear-based reaction and fear-based decision-making where we're not coming up with good solutions, we're just scaring everybody.
But that's
Fear
your
of what,
opinion.
though? Fear of
The-
what? What do you think?
When you
What
say
do you-
residual,
what
when
do
you
you
say
parents are
residual
afraid of?
effects though, these books came in without anyone being aware of them. There wasn't like people saying, oh, these books are in, everyone was like, oh, we're behind it. Like you're saying, it's in all these other libraries. But that's been half the battle. How do these get in to begin with?
So you think like Radnor and the schools in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia that have like incredible academic rigor and great programs.
And you think it's because these books are
I'm
in
not,
there?
no, I'm not
That's
saying
what
it's a
you're saying?
relationship thing, but I'm saying they're more in touch with things that engage children.
Based
And
off these,
we're
you can't
doing it.
say that. That's like a blanket statement to say it's
I
due to
didn't
this.
say it's based on these
But you're
specific
using it as
books.
an argument.
But I'm saying if we look at their library and what they're doing to engage children into voluntary
But you can't
reading.
say that it's due to this. Like you can't say that it's due to these specific books.
All right.
And you don't know
I didn't
specifically
say
what
that.
they're doing.
I didn't
You're
say
using it
that.
as your argument.
I'm
to try to
saying
say
though,
we
when
should
we
keep
look
these books in
at
the library.
districts that are performing better than us, way better than us, and I'm looking at just like what are their best practices around these things. So I was looking at them to be like, all right, did they kick these books out too? I'm not saying like, for
But
the
it's-
fifth time,
it's-
Jordan,
okay,
I'm not
no,
saying
no,
it's
no,
a relational
But it's
thing that, you know,
interesting.
gender
Radnor
queer
only
makes the school
requires
better.
3 social studies credits, and they do a different
gonna say that.
of alignment of social studies, but you're using your argument for this, but not for that piece. So it's like you're picking what I guess
So
sets
why don't
up
we
for
table
what you
this?
agree with.
I mean, we all went through the process, we wanted it in the hands of our administrators,
I-
and it is.
I'd like to understand too, then, what we are doing to encourage our librarians to engage our students into voluntary reading. That's what I would like
Okay,
us
so
talking
that's a
about.
different
Yeah.
topic, right?
And I would agree with that, that we know that for many students, reading for pleasure is a predictor of academic success.
Yes.
So how do we think about and conceptualize what programmatic pieces we are putting into place to encourage students to enjoy reading, to seek out opportunities to read things that they are going to find pleasurable, and how do we start to make moves in that direction? And some of it might tie into some of these books, and some of it might tie into other things. I know, for instance, there's been a lot of research around why is it that we lose boys in reading for pleasure. And one of the reasons that we found is that we push, at a certain point, more fiction and less nonfiction. And statistically speaking, a lot of male readers tend to gravitate towards more nonfiction writing. So let's look at then, for the future, what are we as a academic institution doing actively, and what will we do in the future to encourage a love of reading and to bring books into the libraries that our students will actively be seeking to want to read?
Agree. Another thing I noticed too that I thought was nice is they did have on their district library catalogs links to the public library where they were able to download books to their public school
I like that.
laptops and things like that too, which I think would be a wonderful thing for us to add.
I like that.
I like
One
that
question,
idea.
I'm almost positive that our district does do it, but those families that cannot afford Wi-Fi internet, we do provide hotspots to them, correct? Like, that is an option. Do we give that to them? Like, I know my district does.
It was during COVID.
And like, even if post-COVID, if they are in need of, since everything's basically based on their computer anyway, I would
I mean, our
assume that we
technology
provide that.
department would work for them, but I would be remiss if I didn't speak up at this point about what we do for kids and their independent reading from kindergarten on. I mean, not only do the librarians work really hard and joyfully, I was in an elementary library today, and not just elementary library, the middle school libraries. The librarians in this district are fabulous, and they work with students to engage them in books they want to read. The high school librarian is new to that position, and she knows so many of the kids because she was an elementary librarian. And she is in there trying to engage every student she sees in reading independently. So I do not think that that is a fair assessment that we don't do that. Because I know for a fact, we do it, and we do it really well, and we do it in our reading and English language arts classes too. We're doing that. I think, it's just my opinion, that's separate from this. This was a review process, this is just an
I
outcome
would
of a
like
review
to
process.
speak to the review process as well. So we were tasked publicly,
Yes.
and we were very transparent with everyone that there were 22 books that were removed. 8 were part of an email sequence, 14 others, I don't know how or why they were removed. For folks that are no longer with the district that could speak to that. We were tasked with reviewing these books, and we gave that task per what is in policy 109, the librarian. She had the full latitude, there was no pressure from the superintendent's office, Dr. Scheid, or anyone else. This was her professional opinion right here. This was her professional opinion, so we weren't coercing, fear-mongering, or anything else. This was her professional opinion right here, these books. I understand it's a very, very divisive topic on who thinks that, what freedom students should have. We are relying on our librarian here. One board member mentioned concerns with a book. We have a full reconsideration procedure in place per policy 109. Anyone else in our public, any parent, any staff member who has an issue with these books, put the challenge in and we'll reconsider it.
And as board members, we have to do the same exact thing.
Exact same
I know
thing.
some community members said.
So if there's any questions here, and we have fully outlined a process for purchasing new books in the future. So that we have checks and balances, we give the librarians freedom and latitude, we have a resource list that we may consider. The principal signs off on it, and ultimately Dr. Scheid and I will sign off on these books.
Thank you, Mr. Barrios.
And just one more thing, just
Yep.
as the community member did say about what we're gonna put safeguards, what we're doing is there shouldn't be any one of us, a school board member, to be able to take out a book. What's happened in the past, that's not how we're working now. So if there is an issue that one of us has, let's say if I have an issue, I will go through that same paperwork as anyone else does. So there isn't going to be,
And
I don't like a book, we're taking it out.
And
I'm
we
gonna add, oh, go ahead.
And just to be clear, the process the librarian used was reviewing new books. These didn't go through a reconsideration with the committee of four. It was reviewing books as if they were a new book coming in. And this was her professional opinion that we're respecting. And if anyone, like I said, has an issue with these books, put the reconsideration in and we'll go through it. We have a few others we're working on right now. We can only work on 3 reconsiderations at a time as we try to run the school district.
Okay. And I
Follow
just
the
want to
process.
add to Carolyn's point, I was listening to the meeting on the way over. I'll probably say this at every meeting for the rest of my tenure on the board. No single board member removed any books. I emailed Dr. Bolton and asked him if 13 books were in our library. He said 8 were. I emailed those books to the entire board. Now, you guys know this, so it's confusing because you saw the emails. The entire board directed Dr. Bolton to pull them because we felt they were in violation of our old and new policy because they were not appropriate. Dr. Bolton pulled them. Dr. Bolton never had them reviewed, and under Mr. Barrios, we found out they were still sitting in a pile. You guys all know that. The community, I'll just say it every single month for the next year and a half. That is what happened. So never, since I've been on the board, has a single board member been able to have a book removed.
There
9
is
out of 9.
absolutely nothing in
Nine
those
out of 9
emails about review.
It is the
Nothing
exact-
in those
there
emails
was
about
no
review.
review,
It was
there
removed.
no transparency, and that's what we're saying is not going to happen.
No,
Nothing
you just said
about
a
review.
single board member won't have books removed.
Right.
anymore.
I'm saying that
9
that
board
won't
members.
happen.
I'm
We're not
contradicting
out
what you
now.
just
It's
said,
the
Trey.
transparency, and we're not gonna go over this again, but
Good.
we know
We'll bring
what
up
we have to
transparency
do.
during policy, advocacy policy, so that'll be good. I'm glad you're on the
Absolutely.
transparency train.
I will always be on the
Good. It's gonna
transparency.
become.
Okay,
And I'm
with
fine
that,
with that.
let's close the curriculum committee meeting and move on to policy.
Okay. Well, hold on, I'll get the paper if anyone wants.
I'll take that one.
Alright, so we're gonna start the policy committee meeting. I have 2 people signed up for policy, Laura Foster and Jane Kramer. Did you?
I have more stuff I want to say about the books and like curriculum stuff.
Oh. We're still working out comments. I mean,
That's okay. I'll pass then.
Thank you. Jane, did you have?
No, I'll pass this.
Okay. All right, so that was it for public comment. We'll start first with the policy update plan. There are some updates on things that we talked about the last time. Resource materials was approved at the last board meeting. We're bringing PSBA, the public comment one, back for second read today. We met with administration and prioritized the remaining surveys, et cetera, and we're coming to advocacy first tonight. For dress and grooming, that's still TBD. Laura prioritized that one. The responsible contractor, we did have a meeting with Sean and Kelly to talk, so Mr. Kaufman was able to talk through his ideas around some of it. They were going to go back and discuss this further and come back with their suggestions if it's already captured in things that are already part of their process, etc. We told them this could just be done on their schedule. This was not an urgent one either. Surveys is still one we're going to look at, and then we had one around conduct and disciplinary procedures also. So first read tonight is public comment. I know, Mr. Johnson, do you want to go through this? I think the only thing that changed from first read approval was what we had said during the approval, that we would remove the comment around public comment at committee meetings shall be at the discretion of each committee, because we had addressed it up further under public comment.
Correct. So if you look, and this is at the end of the document, under board committees, let me make that a little clearer. There was a strike through regarding public comment at committee meetings shall be at the discretion of each committee. So that was the one adjustment from the first read that was addressed during the last policy committee meeting.
So since then, there's been still some community feedback and some feedback among board members around ours versus Pennsbury. And I spoke to Pennsbury's board president around the aspects of their policy that were part of the lawsuit, et cetera, and she said it was the wording around what could terminate a public commenter. Things around how long does each person have to speak, how much time do we give, when do we do our comments, do they have to be on agenda items, who is allowed to speak, were not part of the discussions in that lawsuit. So when PSBA put this policy out, those were the sections that they left choices for school boards to either pick the choice they wanted or populate with the information that they have. So this policy reflects all the things we've been discussing so far with regards to who is allowed to speak, how long comments are for, what are on agenda items, what are not, etc. So are there any further comments on this one, on public comment, I guess?
Yeah, the one question I was raising, again, based on community feedback, is defining which speech is allowed to be interrupted. So Pennsbury lists if it incites an immediate breach of the peace, makes comments which are considered to prominently appeal to prurient interests or are otherwise obscene, or if it goes beyond their defined time limit. So we have
ours is much more spelled out.
Yeah, sexual harassment,
Yeah.
statements regarding race, and I'm not sure that
How did we
would
choose to
pass.
not go with it? Because it sounds like when you spoke to the board president, that was the piece, that section that they have there was the section that needed to be from the case. So why would we not just have that?
So we can certainly bring it back to that. but there was a lot of board comment and public comment that that was too vague, and then we added wording too. Like, so we've kind of gone in circles with
Yeah.
this.
I like this.
Because even the wording that was in Pennsbury's, there was a lot of comments around like, well, what does this mean? And so PSBA was trying to define it, we've defined it further, we worked with Mike to define it further. And then our conversations with Mr. Miller, it was mainly around like, is how we defined it anything that is contradictory to the spirit of what was in Pennsbury's? And he doesn't seem to think so.
And also worthwhile to point out that it's not just statements regarding race, it's specifically statements regarding race, ethnicity, religious beliefs, so on and so forth, that violate Title IX, Title VII, federal or state law.
Right.
So it's not, you can make a comment that calls into question something about race or ethnicity or religious belief, as long as it is not violating already prescribed law in the United States of America. So basically, exceptions that already exist to First Amendment speech.
And where did these come from, since this is our version? This is not PSBA, right? You guys said you worked with Mike?
It started
Mike
with
provided
PSBA's, and then when we got Pennsbury, we asked Mike, well, Mike would review this anyway as our solicitor.
Sure.
So Mike reviewed PSBA's and made some edits, and then when we got Pennsbury's, we sent that to him also and said, like, would you change this further based on what you're reading in Pennsbury's? So it actually is a morph of PSBA, our solicitor's input, and Pennsbury's.
So sorry, just to be very specific, the 1, 2, 3, I think we skipped a number, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's all Mike's verbiage that he included in there? Or who brought that to the table?
Like I said, it started with PSBA's, and
Right.
Mike made edits to it. At this point, I don't know who owns each
So
individual
PSBA
word.
has those in there, 1, 2, they have it
Elements
listed
of it,
out.
yes.
So I'm at the point where I'd like to recommend, and you're right, Leah, it's evolved, we've discussed it, gone back and forth, but, to keep going around and round when there's a precedent established, I mean, Pennsbury's is more, is broader. It allows for more public comment than ours is, and if that's the precedent, why not just go down that path rather than
So
going
change
round and round.
that section to be their 3 bullet points.
Yeah, except for, if we want to limit to 3 minutes instead of 5, I guess that's our personal prerogative to do that.
See, I like how it's worded. I like how we're working through the process. I think Pennsbury is too vague. So I would.
But the issue is, what can you terminate public comment
Right.
for?
And that's,
I hear that, and
Yeah,
I'm
and it's
saying
very-
I don't see.
so why, if that's the
The issue
piece
with
that
that.
even the board president said, that's what makes me nervous. like,
Right.
Because it was put, they were taken to court over it, and that piece, even the board president said, that's the piece that they had to have in there. I don't know why ours don't look directly.
I mean,
So
if it's-
remember, we did
Put that
pull
in, right.
Pennsbury's up, and most of you thought it was too vague.
Yes.
I didn't.
I didn't.
I didn't.
And then
And-
does Miller, is this something that Mike feels you go through, that's fine? I mean, that's the biggest thing. Is that the concern that you have?
No, I guess, I feel like Mike would be okay with either one, but the question when it was given to Mike was, is ours okay? And he said yes. But then, first off, I appreciate you, Leah, reaching out to the board president to get more information. I truly do, because I hate having to go around and around for it, but because it was something that went to court, I feel like it's something that we take more seriously. So I guess that's the only part, if that is the piece, it makes me feel like we should be identical to that if that was a takeaway.
Yeah, I guess, why would we want ours to be more restrictive? What's the answer to that question?
I
To be
believe
more
some board members
detailed,
had
is that-
specific concerns around cursing. It was brought up repeatedly.
But I would think like it would still be under that
It's not.
section from Pennsbury, like it would still, that would be included.
Cursing would be allowed in either version of
Yes,
these
right.
policies.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we need cursing, but we don't
Right.
want to be sued over stuff like this either.
Well, we'd only be sued if we stopped someone and we shouldn't have.
Yeah,
And so
And right now, we're saying we have more reasons to stop someone than Pennsbury does.
We're giving examples because they're not limited, it's including but not limited to. I mean, it's also letting people know, informing them, this is what our public comment is like, read this, and this is what's not acceptable. I don't see it, I guess, the same way you guys do.
For some reason, I can't get on Pennsbury's board docs right now.
Could be if you're signed into ours.
Yeah,
Right.
I keep thinking,
Yeah.
So, but I think you put it in your documents, I'm opening that up.
Sure. You want the printed copy? Would that help you?
Sure, thank you.
No peeking at it.
That's okay. So, immediate breach of peace, comments which are considered as a whole, prominently appeal to prurient interest or are otherwise obscene or constitute threats of bodily harm. Okay, so it was the obscene part that we were going back and forth on. So in an effort to make it clearer and still stay within the legal limits, we put in further definition.
I was going to say, looking at Pennsbury's, it looks like Pennsbury would give us broader power to shut down speech.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Than
because this makes it more
Because
specific.
these are the specific reasons why we would. That uses words like obscene. Now, obscene is once again an opinion-based word. So we could, but as we've seen within our debates over what books should be in the library, et cetera, we have different definitions of what that word is. So I think the benefit of the policy that we have, it is very specifically saying these are the situations that would constitute that type of a situation. And that's why I think it's more bullet points.
I do like how we're more specific, not in that section, but how when it talks, I guess it's under, like it talks about, public comment shall occur before and after, and then it gives like the presiding officer and district solicitor have the authority to, and it says like give a warning, call a recess, like I like that stuff's in there. And I don't feel like that technically goes under what, I like that those things, are spelled out.
Right, like what the process
Yeah,
is.
like, so
Right.
I like that piece of ours versus Pennsbury's, our draft. But then the one part, Christine, like you were saying, it's contradicting, that one piece where it says like, what did you say? It was like, public comment at committee meetings shall be at the discretion of each committee, but
Yeah, we
then.
already took
But
that
that's
out.
all.
Okay, so that's out,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
For the fifth.
So, where's my document? It talks about
Oh, here, do you want this
obscenity.
back?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
obscenity
There
in
you go.
theirs. There's existing laws on obscenity, correct, that defines that?
So then that's probably where the specific comes from.
Right.
Right, so I believe PSBA would cite the legal aspects of it. Once we finalize the wording, they would go through it.
It would have to have those numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
Citations,
Yeah.
legal citations.
So if we put that in there versus those specifics, I don't know. It would be,
No, they always
you would
put
just
the-
have it after that, like that.
They always put the legal at the bottom, so they identify it in the content, the text for it, and then the legal's always at the bottom. If you look at like any of our policies, the all the legal references fall to the bottom of the, but it's always described in the policy itself.
And the other concern I had, or question, was if the district solicitor truly has the authority to interrupt comments, rather than just the presiding officer.
Yeah, my thoughts on that is I feel like the solicitor might even be better versed than the presiding officer around like what can legally and not legally be halted.
Well, I think he's there to keep us out of trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he's also not a committee meeting, so.
Right, and he's
True.
not the elected official.
I don't know if elected officials have any more powers in nature of the First Amendment than other people do.
Well, he's not the presiding officer, so if he interrupts,
Right. But I understand, Ricky, like, he's not always here to Ricky's point. But that's why it says or, right? So we're saying that even in board meetings, we would say Mr. Miller would not be allowed to say anything. It would be up
no,
to the
not
board
to
president.
interrupt comment, or,
Right.
I mean, he could
Yeah.
tell the presiding officer, hey,
Yeah,
stop
Perhaps-
it.
his
perhaps-
expertise with the First Amendment, he could let the presiding
That's
officer know.
The presiding officer with the information of the solicitor might be
Right.
a better way to say it. So it's not the solicitor who is interrupting, it should be one of us who is doing the interrupting.
The presiding officer is who it should be.
Because it says and, you're right, it doesn't say or.
Oh, okay. Well, so in that case, we would just take the solicitor out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It feels counterintuitive to our concerns about getting in legal trouble over this, though.
If you take it out. I don't mind if it's in there.
Instead of taking it out, might I suggest adding the words "at the advice of"?
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, because you're right, sometimes I feel like,
Mhm.
yeah.
I mean, I like Ron, but I feel like Mr. Miller's a better resource for
yes.
this.
Sometimes you think with, whatever boards after us, and if their
Mhm.
solicitors are used to how the flow of the meetings go and things like that too.
So, but back to the sections around when comment can be interrupted or terminated. I feel like there isn't I feel like there's a lot of opinions on it.
Yeah.
And it's to the point where what are our concerns? So our concerns are that we might be spelling something too specific, that if we enact it, it could put us in legal trouble.
Yes.
And that seems to me.
And we already have precedent in our county.
But could it, I guess, could it? I mean, what being specific, why is that a bad thing?
Is it worth all the time investment to get that specific? If there's precedent that's very recent and in our county, would be my question.
Yeah, but I think if Mike's already reviewed it and said it's okay, then I don't know that it's, why?
And
Why
you'd
worry
answer
about
this
the
case all the time.
precedent when he's already reviewed this policy? As the way he's reviewed all the policies.
I don't know, maybe to be asked again.
So so we'll take out the wording around that, like, both the solicitor and the presiding officer can stop, and we'll add something that's with the advice, but I guess only if he's there, because he's not here like tonight and there's public comment, we can
At the advice
clean
of,
up.
if available.
If available. Or, well, that's what I'm saying, like, maybe we just take that out and we just assume that.
Or just say, if you do have the advice, if he's not there, then he's not there.
Yeah.
But if he is, then there
His
is
advice is
advice, I
enough.
still think we should leave it.
Okay, so we'll update that wording, and then we want to send this back to Mike again to, like, he already measured against Pennsbury. Are there other aspects that we want him to, or do we want to just have him pressure test it and just be like, if we stop someone because they were disclosing confident personal information regarding a student or staff,
Yeah.
would that hold up in court?
Yeah, I guess my ultimate question is, what do we gain by being this specific? What do we walk away with that?
Well, we walk away with clearer rules around what you're allowed to stop and what you're not. And so, from my understanding, the crux of the Pennsbury wasn't all the things that are in here around, like, confidential information, et cetera. Is that someone and they felt that their free speech was violated. And they were saying, well, because it was obscene, and they're like, you can't, because it's so much of an opinion, like, you really
Right.
just need to follow First Amendment rights.
Yeah.
But then there's more to running these meetings than, going out in town and putting a soapbox up, like, we don't want people disclosing confidential and personal information, like, we're still running a district, and there were things that were added that I feel like would be protected if it went to a lawsuit, but maybe we could certainly ask Mike to just scrub it again. And maybe
What's safer technically, I feel like, and with what Christine said, if obscene has legal definition to go with it, I feel like that would be a question to ask Mike, like if we had the obscene with the legal printed, whether it's at the bottom versus what we have now, what is, in his opinion, I don't know, most efficient?
I mean, not to like armchair lawyer like seems so frequent, but I think the crux of the Pennsbury thing was free speech cases, public commenters. Like everything else that's kind of like in here isn't what was really covered in the crux of that lawsuit. I think narrowing it down to the bullet points here doesn't give you a broad spectrum argument where you could have a board sitting there and they don't have a concrete guideline to say these are the circumstances in which you can end a public comment. Having it being vague just gives too much power to whoever's presiding over the meeting to be able to shut it down, which would put you into legal jeopardy. I think having prescribed metrics that say this is what can shut a meeting down helps not get you in trouble. I think having a vague policy puts you in trouble. I think Mike's reviewed it already. He's given a green light to it. I don't see the point in wasting more money sending it back to him to review something that he's just going to send back to us and say, this is the third time that I reviewed it and it's okay.
So I'm questioning the opposite. I'm really questioning number one. I don't know that we can terminate comments regarding race or religious belief or ethnicity.
But that's all in Title IX. So it's already
Which
prescribed
violates
by,
title, yeah.
it's already prescribed by federal statute.
It's
Why
not that
don't we
they
just
can't
put
come up
the-
and speak about race.
Right.
But they can't get up here and say something
Violate Title
disparaging to someone about their race, you know, like.
I mean, that's what happened in Pennsbury. And they lost that case.
It was something,
I think racial comments were involved.
I thought it was about Jewish people.
But it's directed towards an individual, was it directed towards a specific person in Pennsbury?
So if we ask him to look at number one compared to the vaguer wording that's in Pennsbury's, and he says that it still looks good to him, like he doesn't feel like we're putting ourselves over a barrel with this.
But can you highlight, if you're gonna email him that specific section? Like if he doesn't wanna look
Okay.
at the whole thing, because some of the
Yeah.
other things I think is fine, but specific to that piece, more focused.
So number one. Okay, and then we'll go from there.
And I think it is good to have it spelled out more than Pennsbury a little bit for just three basic reasons. One, I think it's important for us to hold ourselves accountable that here are the specific reasons why we would. I think it's important because it informs the public. When a public commenter gets up there, they have the ability to know in advance exactly what types of things would be legally impermissible. And then finally, it is of our benefit to do the most we can to protect the right of any citizen who wants to take that pulpit to have their right to free speech. And so I think when we are vague, that's when we make mistakes, that's when we accidentally violate someone's right. So the more specific we can get about what are the direct scenarios where we would feel the need, based in the law, to have to do that, if we can spell them out, I think that's a better option.
I almost feel like you have to set the law then, like not give scenarios. I don't know, it's uncomfortable with us just having verbiage if they're like just citing Title IX and having that, I don't know.
Oh, sorry, at the top of it, it cites all the legal rationale. that's where over legal. I agree with Bradley, and I said it before. I think taking it out and leaving it vague just opens us up to more problems than it solves. I don't want people going up there and making racist comments, ethnic comments, comments towards people's religious beliefs. If we want to open it up and make it vague and let that happen, then.
It's not about opening up, I think it's just like legally, like
Right.
legal, you don't want it,
Right, but
again,
if you
like-
leave it vague, I think it just makes it opens it up, because there's no, I don't know, I just think you make it vague and you're opening a can of worms. I think this sets out a prescription that this is what's expected of us as board members and.
It'd be one thing if we said that, like, oh, this is what's expected, but then, and to terminate, like that,
Right.
First Amendment's tricky, there's a lot of things going on out in the world with First Amendment, a lot of cases, like that's the tough part, I guess. If we're put in a position where we would, terminate someone, and then I don't know, that.
I'd rather shut down racist comments and have to go to court over it than deal with it, but that's just me.
You'd rather what?
If it's, I'd rather shut down racist, ethnic, religious comments, xenophobe, like whatever.
But that's not the
comments,
only
like-
thing that's under that piece.
Well,
You know what I mean?
regarding
There's
race,
multiple
ethnicity,
things.
religious belief, or nationality, like.
Once again, that violate Title IX, Title VII, or federal and state law. So it's not any comment,
Be
it's
like-
only ones that have already been determined
Yeah, prescribed.
to violate the law.
And if I shut it down, then it's a law,
I mean, I don't think
committees,
we've
but-
ever had a single case of this from an audience other than directed at the school board.
Right.
No, that's not true at all.
No,
The community committee was a terrible public comment, that was me.
Community committee?
Yeah.
Well,
The ad hoc.
Board meetings, that would have applied anyway.
The public comment at that meeting was bad.
Well, yeah, that wasn't a board meeting, so I don't think that would have applied.
Would
You're
that
talking
even
about the
apply,
community,
I guess a committee?
Yeah, it would have been
Consider a
under a committee, so it would have been, we read policy 903 before people did comments. Yeah. So, I'm wondering what would help is if I'll send Ms. Miller this section, and I'm gonna ask him for some examples of like, if this happens, that would not be something, but if this happens, it does, because I do understand, that like to Bradley's point, it's really more ones that violate Title IX and not, that we're trying to take the matter of opinion out of this, but it doesn't mean all of us are certainly not experts on Title IX and Title VII and all those things, so, I'll ask him for some examples of what would be okay and what would be something that we would stop the comment for. Would that be helpful? Like, and if you guys have specific things you're concerned about, send them to like Christine and I, and we can send that to Mike too. Like, would something like this be okay? Or like scenarios, because I think that's what resonates most with everyone is when you can imagine what it is that's being said. So if there's some scenarios that you have questions on, send them to us. We'll get feedback from Mr. Miller and we can like walk through it as a group. Does that work? Okay, so we'll take out the part, we'll be like solicitors advising, or whatever the word, we'll get to it. And then I'll send this section, but in the meantime, if you have specific examples you're concerned about or have questions, let us know and we can find out. And then maybe from there, it'll help us even better understand exactly what is meant by some of these things versus not. Okay. Where are we? So this is, I guess, still on first read then, because we'll bring that back to discuss at the next committee meeting. So this won't be something that'll be voted on in the board meeting. For advocacy, this was one that came up at our last meeting as one to look into. When board leadership and administration and I were walking through what to do with it, there were a lot of opinions. The initial suggestion, I think even at the last committee meeting, was to revert it back. But we thought it would be better to have that be the discussion at committee, like the whole do we revert it back or not. So the effort of going through, redlining everything, et cetera, we wanted to have the initial discussion first on reverting it back to the previous version or amending this one. And so that's why it was brought back here without a red line. It's, both policies are posted.
Well, with transparency being a hot word, when, last time on the policy plan, it was to be determined when this would come up. So when was it determined that this would be at this committee meeting tonight?
When we met with leadership and admin, we talked about,
Which was when?
I don't remember.
A while ago? And everyone agreed, I guess, that this was jumped from the bottom to the top?
I don't think it was on the bottom.
It was on the bottom until tonight. It's been on the bottom for the last several.
Right.
It only got added at the last meeting.
Regardless of where it fell, I think this is one of the ones that does a significant amount of damage within the district, which I
Right,
think
the
is
question
probably
is
the
how
reason
did
to
it
bump
go
it.
from,
Well, you take one that does damage and put it towards the top and fix it.
but I guess my question is, did administration feel that there's an issue with this and so we addressed it? Or?
Yeah, are they the ones saying that this one's doing a ton of damage?
No.
Right.
Okay.
So,
So I think there's, again, kind of goes back to the whole discussion on like fear-based policymaking, that when
Those are
you
your
create
words.
an environment where it's like heavy on discipline, low on trust, it makes people unwilling to come forward. So if we're measuring that like, oh, no one said anything, that means this is a good idea. It's not. And actually what measures it more is people will just leave, which we saw. Like, those are the reasons why we're examining these policies, because there were bad policies written that had a serious impact on our district and
These are all
staff
opinions, though.
retention.
Right,
You're
these
just
are.
sharing your opinion.
because a lot of
Why-
families left the district because of their lack of trust, so you can't.
So did a lot of
because-
families leave
so
the
it goes
district,
both
but like,
ways.
I agree.
But you're
but-
stating only one.
You were asking,
Piece
this
of
is a policy for staff, and we
Correct.
lost a lot of staff.
Yeah, staff
Right.
attrition was through the roof.
Right. So, and this is
Not
part
to the
of that
extent that it was
problem.
here.
The last board did a lot of damage
In
and cost a
every
lot.
state, teachers were walking
And it was
out.
exceptionally high at Pennridge.
It was
I
worse
was
in
about to say,
Pennridge.
Well, we should pull that data. and see how much
We've
higher
seen
it
it.
was.
And we've heard from teachers, so.
And then this, when this
Well,
came
and we
live
heard from
though,
teachers too, I've heard from teachers.
Right.
Who were thrilled to not have to deal with this anymore.
100%.
So,
Who teach here or at Sourton?
no,
Here.
teach at Pennridge.
And we lost some teachers too, not just based on the policies, but I know,
Here's the thing, the
that- I know it
reason that
doesn't go
this
with the
policy
narrative.
was initially passed
Is because of the
is
ILC.
Because of the ILC.
What, no, well, here's the thing.
Which
Since was
I
on
think
the
that
board
we
in
should
Newark,
follow
I'll tell
Central
you why
York
the
and
board
follow
passed
policy
it. It had
833.
nothing to
Do you know,
with
did you
ILC.
know it came from ILC?
The whole policy?
Yeah.
Word for word verbatim? That's
The
interesting.
first draft started with the ILC version.
Leah, the reason we wanted a policy is because what was happening
Like the queer
is
kids.
if you don't have this flag, you're not a safe space.
Right.
That it's a safe space as soon as you walk in the front door.
It's not.
And
It's not.
that's what the expectation should be, and just
That is
because.
what
And that's why we have the OCR
And
complaint.
here's the
Wait,
thing, now
why
they have
did-
straight pride
what
flags,
information
so then we're
did you
gonna have to
have-
tag that.
We're gonna have
And
to
then
vote.
Jewish and Christian.
What
and,
information did you have that anyone thought if you didn't put a flag up that it wasn't a safe space? Like, what's that based on?
Students,
Right.
teachers, there was a whole issue over
And you
Silent Day, and if teachers were or
Weren't
weren't allowing,
participating, then they
didn't
look
have
like
a
they're
flag,
not
and
being
didn't have-
supportive.
So
100%.
now it's this, you have this flag, and so you
And-
are sympathetic to gay students. You don't, and you're transphobic. Same thing happens in the community. So then my question is, if we're gonna allow that, we have to allow everything. We have to allow, now there are straight pride flags. If you're gonna hang a gay pride flag, you also have to hang that. If you're gonna hang something about Christianity, then you have to hang something about every other major religion, or every religion with anyone in this district. Or we just have to say Pennridge does not allow bullying of anyone at any time, for any reason. And if you do it, there's consequences.
Right.
So if
But
we
that's-
don't, so what you're saying is that we need to recognize everybody. If we recognize one, we should recognize everybody.
Well, yeah.
It has to be
Ex-
none
And
or
that's
all.
exactly the point, is right now, we have no representation or, we don't give the opportunity to everybody. Policies like
What
these,
opportunity do we have?
policies
Right.
like these
What
are
opportunities
discriminatory.
are they being withheld from? Be specific. What
Yeah, I mean,
opportunities
this is talking
are
about
students being kept
neutrality
from?
in curriculum and classroom instruction. This is not about supporting students or,
It's called
I mean,
advocacy.
it's very
That's what the
specific.
definition of advocacy.
But
And the
this is-
But you
neutrality
would not
in
want
curriculum.
teachers to be advocating anything of their personal beliefs onto students. It's not just, I know tonight a lot of the comments were based on LGBTQ community, but it's not just with that. It expands from a whole lot of advocacy. And it's good to have some of those things in there. I've been called as a teacher like, oh, I wouldn't want my child in her class because she's gonna be talking about her Christianity or her conservative views. Like, you wouldn't want the same thing on the other end. That's what it's supposed to be. There's even been instances of like, you know, demasculinity and things like that that have sometimes been an issue within the schools, behind the school doors. Bottom line is, children are in schools for 7 hours a day for 180 days a year. And teachers have a lot of power with that. There's nothing wrong to have a policy in place to make sure there's accountability, that you're staying neutral, and you're not pushing your beliefs. That doesn't mean that if a child comes to you and wants to discuss something with you, that you can't be there and be a safe space. That's why I mentioned that. Like, I don't think that you should have to have a sticker on your door to be safe space. You should already be building that rapport as a professional, as staff, which I do think we do, and you don't need that sticker for that. And you're gonna jive with some students more than others. Students feel more comfortable with teachers more than other teachers sometimes. That's the name of the game. And you don't turn them away like, I can't advocate. The students coming to you, you have all those things in place. You speak to them, then you can talk to guidance, you inform their parents. If it's something that you can't, there's all those things in place. But this wasn't just like, oh, we need to get rid of the rainbow stickers, and no, you should not be advocating.
What
period.
about all the research that shows that when students see themselves reflected back to them on posters on the wall, in their textbooks, in the staff, how much that boosts up learning and mental health things among the school? Like all this, what concerns me about this, there's a lot of things that concern me about it, but the first thing I'll talk about is that, there are proven methods that show that doing these things, that whole like one trusted adult, that a child who is having a hard time, when they find that one trusted adult can change the entire trajectory of what ends up happening with them. So when you have something that like, and you think about the things that teenagers struggle with, if I am, I'm a girl and I'm struggling with some stuff with my girlfriends, I might talk to one of my teachers because I can see she's a girl, but there are things that you don't know where that person stands. And if there's a student having a hard time with their sexuality or anything like that, and they see that sticker, it does a lot of things. One, it just shows them they're not alone, even if that's not the day they decide to talk to the teacher. Two, it also shows them that this is a teacher I probably could talk to about this, because they are
We
sympathetic.
have clubs, we have supervisors that reach out to a bunch of different groups where they can identify with. We have a women's club, there's so many specific things as well.
But
I feel like there's such a hyper focus that it needs to be this way, and you have to have this in order for that to happen. There's other ways that can be attributed to.
There's a difference between saying that you are allowed to have a sticker up on your door that shows that you are understanding and someone that you can talk to about your sexuality. That's a difference, as opposed to a policy that full-on labels who some of our students are as controversial and, not something to be discussed. And that, to me, is a dangerous message coming from a district.
May I seek clarity here for a moment?
Yes.
Your purpose is to say that you do not want teachers to try and force their political opinions on students, correct?
No, I mean, you're making just a general pointed statement, so no.
Well, I'm asking, that's the goal.
No, I don't, you just said
What then
political.
is the goal?
So that you're not advocating, and listen, there's been plenty of instances across the nation in schools where teachers have, or staff members have, put on or groomed children, okay?
Come on, stop that language like that.
That's not covered by advocacy
does-
or politics.
It can be
That's
with
a crime.
advocacy 100%. And it might not even be known because it's behind closed doors, 7 hours a day, 180 days a year.
Grooming's
Again,
dangerous language to be
But this,
using,
this
because that is not what's
policy,
happening.
okay, this policy
You
is.
You're
can
not
so,
grooming.
you can so confidently state that. You don't know.
Because
7 hours a day,
what-
180 days a year.
What-
That is
what's
ignorant
your
to say
definition of
that.
grooming?
So, all right, hold on.
Because grooming is trying to get them into a position where they are going to sexually assault a child.
We just
That is
had
not-
an incident in Pennridge.
But
Was it an LGBT person assaulting a
Why is the
child?
hyper focus on that? It should be all the students. There's such a
And-
hyper focus that it's just that one group that we need to be making sure that we're advocating for.
and once again,
And
though,
there's a
that
bunch other
has,
included. It's
Yeah.
not just
and more
that.
importantly, and this needs to be pointed out here, that has nothing to do with advocacy or political activities.
100% it can.
That
You're
is
advocating
criminal
your
code.
identity.
That is criminal
Your,
conduct.
some of your personal
That is-
beliefs, if you are pushing it on a child, yes.
Has
As teachers,
nothing
staff,
to
you
do
have
with
a lot of
potentially
power.
committing
A
that crime.
child that identifies as LGBTQ is not their belief, that's who they are. You are not going to tell a child and make him LGBTQ because of your belief. And this policy is vague enough that a teacher in the district could have a family photo in which they have a pride flag in that photo, and they could be held to account because that pride flag is in the photo. So now that you're forcing them to not be able to have their family pictures in it because they have a pride flag and thing.
They can 100%
Yeah,
have a
I don't
family
think
picture.
that's
Not by,
true.
not by this policy.
I don't think that's
true.
The staff didn't feel comfortable though to have a picture.
Which staff, how many staff they came to you and said they didn't feel comfortable?
At
doing
least
something?
3.
I've talked to a
And they were
significant
told
number
they
of
couldn't have
them.
that picture.
And I'm
They felt very
expected to,
uncomfortable
and I
on
will be
this.
And
talking
they
to
went
the
to, like,
GSA coming up.
whatever
And I look
administration
forward to
said they
hearing
didn't
from
feel
their
comfortable
input as well.
and they did it to
They went to their best.
And they've all said no.
Jordan, you're
They just
missing the
didn't feel
point that when
comfortable.
you
It's
write a fear-based policy,
No, those are your
you
words,
can't
fear-based.
say, and no one said anything to me, so it must be fine.
No.
Who's gonna say anything to you with this up here?
No.
Who's gonna come to you, Jordan, and be like, Jordan, this policy, I'm not very
Plenty,
comfortable with it.
plenty of staff have come to board meetings and said exactly what was on their minds with a tone that was not favorable, and that's fine, they're allowed to do
So that
that.
absolves
don't
us of
say
all
that they're
responsibility
afraid to
to
tell
write
me
a
how they
policy.
feel when it's happened multiple times.
So that absolves us of writing a policy based on
Plenty.
actual research,
Or written
educational
articles,
best
so
practices,
stop with that, that they
etc.
don't feel comfortable.
They don't feel
Multiple staff
comfortable.
ever have.
So
What's our
the point-
responsibility
And-
here?
So here's the
In
thing.
media.
Let's go elementary school. Obese kids and poor kids are bullied. So what do we do for them? What do we do for I can tell you probably a third of the schools in this girls in this school have an eating
But
disorder.
that- they don't
It's a
matter,
national
Ricky.
pandemic
Of course
right
that
now.
matters. Why wouldn't it matter?
There's
But
only a
then
hyper
do we have
focus.
a flag for them saying you can talk to this teacher if you
It's not a
are
flag, but you can
poor, or
have
you
body
can talk-
image posters, you can do all kinds of things. Why wouldn't we do that?
And so then where does it end that each classroom has how many flags rather than this whole
Well, this is where you
district is
trust
state?
your staff to have a pulse on what's happening in their
We had a
classrooms.
teacher last year send out paperwork on the first day asking to please share your pronoun, and may I let your parents know you use pronoun. Leah, the community doesn't
That's actually a
emphatically trust
best,
the
that's
staff.
actually a best practice, Ricky.
To
A
hide
proven,
from the
who?
parents?
To
proven
who?
best
To
practice.
who? And who is the one stating
No.
it's a best
Who's-
practice?
In the real world.
Research,
It happens
like,
The
every
real
No,
world.
the ones that line up with
This
your
is a school for kids. This is not
beliefs.
where you.
Preparing
if the
them for the
teachers
real
ask
world.
If they should lie to the parents. That's insane.
that's, you're, you are equating that to saying like the kid's like, yeah, lie to my parents.
Do you have a pronoun?
Yeah.
Can I let your parents know?
Yeah,
So
what is
you
wrong
want
with
me
that?
to call you him, but when your
guardian
mom
parent
comes in,
here.
pretend that we're not doing that. No, that's not what a public school is supposed to be, and the trust is broken. And that's.
The trust with who?
With
If
the
you
other
were-
parents, not on CNN or Fox, it was
So if
everybody.
it, okay, let's dissect that a little further.
Can-
then.
wait,
If
hold on,
that
Leah,
student
just-
is, go ahead.
Just at the mental health symposium that 4 of us were at, they explained to this how sometimes the children aren't comfortable even talking about those things to their parents. And sometimes they need the ability to go to somebody to be able to talk to a trusted adult and be able to
No, I would have
express
guidance
their
counselors.
feels.
It's not just
We have
always
a
guidance
whole-
counselors.
Because how many,
System.
there are people in this community who have disowned their LGBTQ children, and then they come to the meeting and talk about how harmful LGBTQ is.
Come to what meeting? What do you mean?
To
Our meetings.
board meetings. They target LGBTQ kids after they've disowned their own kid. I don't, obviously, they
Who's
didn't
done
have
it?
any
Who's come
type
to the
of,
meetings and targeted their own child?
The only people
you know,
targeted are
target
people
LGBT kids.
sticking up for LGBTQ kids who get up and say all these adults hate you. None of the adults who allegedly hate them have ever
Were you at the
targeted them.
meeting where we had a student stood at the podium and expressed her experiences in the school district and then had to walk back to her seat through a line of adults who were making comments that I heard on the other side of the stage? I wasn't even close to the pulpit, and I heard as she walked back, made comments, and then sat in the
There's also
stage.
been comments with other children there as he walked back to his seats from the
As
other side
she-
of the aisle stating things as well. So again, one and one, which one's worse? They're not, they're even.
And this is
So
the
it's
reason why
both.
we're in an OCR complaint, is because you're saying he, when it's a she.
No, I'm talking about a separate child. You were saying for the child that walked back and had to walk through people making comments. Another child came up and made comments about the bathrooms and that making him uncomfortable. And when he walked back to his seat, other people in the crowd were making comments as well. So it's the same, but I don't hear you calling that out. Just one
The
side.
point is, there are ignorant people, but you're not gonna make a policy that just eliminates ignorant people, so.
You can write an ignorant policy though. So this policy, let's get back to the beginning of it though too. Why was ILC invited into our school district to write these policies when they are a known organization with motivations to
No,
like
that is
pray the gay?
the things that you read that state that about them.
That did
They're-
not
they-
come, you guys didn't get any input from ILC on this policy.
No, sorry, what you're saying that they are.
Yeah.
How you're stereotyping them.
Education policy?
Yeah.
They're solicitors, they have portrayed.
They could be a solicitor,
PSBA
but
doesn't.
I don't know if
PSBA
they
doesn't.
have an expertise.
Just like with the
in
bathroom policy, we'd
education
love to know
policy.
more about where that came from for the sex-based, because PSBA doesn't have one. Same. So call spade a spade for the things, same thing.
So I would like to, at some point, move forward, because Central York passed a policy, 833, which would.
That's
limit
reaching.
this.
I read that. That's like reaching.
Doesn't matter.
No, it's very reaching. The
I
way
would
that you
still
guys
like
are
to pass that
understanding it is
policy.
reaching. Like, it doesn't even state that. It doesn't even state that.
It would keep ILC out, and I don't
It
think.
really wouldn't. Like, I don't know. Read the line that
The
you're
board
reading, because I
could vote.
missed it.
It's saying it needs to be talked about publicly though. Like a board could still vote to bring ILC in, but it needs to be transparent. And the community needs to
You
know.
mean
what's
transparent how
happening.
this policy ended up on tonight's
It
meeting?
is
Short
transparent.
notice.
This is a surprise,
Right,
Jordan.
Right,
You're not part of the
right.
policy
Were you at the
committee
policy
anyway.
committee
Oh,
last time?
yeah, and it wasn't stated. At the next policy committee, we will be discussing policy
Well,
321.
no, what I said is that we will go back and go through everyone's comments and prioritize which ones will be.
And then
consumed.
what, it would have been nice to have like a,
I don't
in the
understand how
meeting
you
with the
think this thing
leadership,
should be run.
who said, we're gonna put this on here? Everyone on the phone? That you guys met, who said, we're gonna bring it here? Christine was a part of it.
I think Ron started it and I agreed.
Oh, so two?
So it was on the
Two,
phone?
but
I didn't know it
admin
was on the
two?
phone.
No.
Exactly. So we're
So I
being
don't know what
transparent
your
with
point
everything,
is.
again.
Well, it says very clearly that it's board initiated, Jordan, so you know.
Yeah, but it's not board initiated, that's just you typing the word board initiated.
So we got a consensus at the
No.
policy meeting that we wanted to address this policy.
Yeah, but not the next committee meeting, it was to be determined, and then it just pops up on the
Does it
next
matter?
committee.
So, but Jordan, we
Yeah.
didn't even
Sure.
come with a first read, we literally just came saying we're gonna start the
This is
discussion.
discussion.
No.
Like, you're grow up.
And you asked for
This is the
transparency and
discussion.
they just verbally told you exactly what happened and what
Yeah,
occurred.
like,
No, and Christine said no.
Right.
I
She
said
didn't
no
read that as
too.
Which
well.
they just informed you.
Right, so
And they
two
informed
people,
you
then
that-
it says, oh, it goes up here, so where's the consensus?
But we're talking
Who
about
said
it
out
now.
loud that they wanted to, because I don't remember an official consensus, like, yes, yes, yes.
Jordan, let that go, all right? Because we are transparent,
Okay.
and you just want to pick it apart so we don't have to.
Let the consensus go.
Was there a consensus on the discipline one? And we kept it up here. We'll talk about it.
I had to
Like,
fight hard for that. These are the ones go
But we
easy.
didn't.
Ooh.
So again, we can talk about the same topics over and over again. The whole consensus thing we went through ad nauseum at the last meeting, where it was like, I didn't realize we had consensus, like we aren't voting, and we're like, well, we should know it's gonna have some traction, that's people. And we went through and said, are there, and where there were at least 5 board members there who said that they wanted to address this policy. So what did you miss? Where were you?
No, the
Oh,
fact
wait,
that
you
it's,
left. You actually weren't here. So, what happens
That
is, no, but
doesn't
Jordan,
mean-
then don't come back here and make accusations when you don't have
No,
the
there
information.
is grounds for accusations.
When have
There
we
100%
not
is.
been completely
You
clear
haven't
about?
been.
We have
Just
been.
like Rick even sent the email as well. Like, how did this just pop up on here?
Why
To
do
go-
you think
to
it
be
just
for
popped
committee?
up? Like, we literally just talked about a whole
You
list
just
of
don't
them.
want it there, so I think
Well, no,
that's.
and that's fine. You're right. You're right. But
And
but
that's
it's
fine,
still
but we were,
just like you guys want to try to say like you
So-
Mark
Jordan, please
like
explain
that
to
when
me,
you
and
ran.
Ricky,
And it did.
and
You weren't
Christine,
I doubt you-
why
you're not
did you
gonna say,
feel
"Here's
you
the
needed
policies you wanna
ILC's
take away."
assistance in crafting a policy around this?
We're
The
just
three of
talking
you.
about there
Right.
was not, the PBSA.
PSPA didn't have any
PSPA
verbiage on it.
Have no policy.
Right. And then
So
you can
we
bring in,
took a
and
draft
we didn't
and
take
we
verbatim
did-
either.
No,
It was
this
something that was
is-
discussed.
the first
We sent it
draft
to
was from
solicitors for
ILC.
review. Yeah, and it was posted, but a lot of it wasn't even taken. Personally, I would be fine to have taken that first draft, but that did not
There's a
happen.
starting point because.
Exactly, 'cause there was nothing out there.
There's several that PSPA does not have a policy.
Right, 100%.
Right, because this is not a good policy.
So what
No,
changes
it's
are
because they don't
you
want to take it because it's
recommending?
controversial.
So,
roll it back.
roll
what
it
we
back
had.
to just the political
The political
activities
activities.
and let the teachers continue to care for our students the way they always have
So my
done.
question is, if flag for one group, they will have them for any group.
If there's a teacher who wants to put a straight pride flag up, we can work that out.
It has to be all or
It has to
nothing.
be all or
It cannot be targeted.
What do you mean, all or nothing?
Well,
What does that
Have
even
to
mean?
either represent everybody or say,
If that
when
teacher
you
That's a
walk in the
cop-out.
door,
That's not even the
everybody
point
is
of
protected.
advocacy. What is the definition of advocacy? That's not even the point
It
of it.
says, well, here it says advocacy shall be defined as using power, position, or authority to advise or persuade.
That's not what advocacy is, though. Advocacy is taking a pulse on what's happening. It's the same thing you would do when you walk into a party and you might see someone off in the corner that looks uncomfortable, and you would go and you'd be like, let me try and pull that person in. That's how our teachers use advocacy.
and
So that's
And
not what
so-
this policy is about neutrality in curriculum.
But that neutrality in curriculum has actually been, I don't even, first of all,
And
none of you
classroom
can even
instruction. define
define that, number one. What is that? What is
Sure.
neutrality in
I
curriculum?
can define it easily. It's offering both sides to any issue that is not 100%, let's say for 100 years, carbon stone, we all agree.
That is not a neutral classroom at all.
Teach how to think, not what to think.
Right.
So actually, it's proven that when you teach how to think, the most critical first step is to show kids that someone's opinion does not carry the same weight as proven facts. And so when we look at like there's this side and that side, and this is based largely on opinion, and this is based on facts, no matter how old or new it is, this carries more weight. So right there, that neutral classroom is something that was made up by lawyers who are not specializing in education and do not understand how school districts run. Period. And the same with neutrality in the classroom, right? Do you feel like there's, the only thing this room says is Pennridge School District. Do you feel like this is a neutral room right now?
Yeah.
Really? You feel equally supported? Right, that's what I mean, like, do you feel supported the same way?
But it
others-
doesn't matter.
really-
Whatever you put in the room, some person's going to feel differently than somebody else.
So you guys are looking at this like, if someone's advocating that they're, the opposite is true, that they don't even like or care about anyone who's not the group they're advocating for. And that is
No.
not what advocating
No,
is.
the bottom line is you
Advocating
need to
is,
not be
until, let me
pushing
finish my
anything
thought,
on.
Jordan. Advocating is a
Finish on our
teacher who knows their students, who knows what's going on in their classroom. There
Right.
might be a student who, like we said, whose
And you
family's
should
from
need
the
a sticker
Ukraine.
to do that.
A student whose family is from the Ukraine and they're concerned and they're hearing things, they're like, we're gonna just talk about the Ukraine today. Because they know that this kid's like in a tough spot. They are 100%, we should trust them to do that.
Wait,
This
you're
now-
saying, time out.
When you're in-
saying because of that child, then you're gonna talk about Ukraine to the entire class and put it under that umbrella? Is that what you're saying?
You just might have something that we're gonna
No,
talk about Ukraine.
that's what I'm talking about.
Why?
You shouldn't have a situation that is dealing with one student and then take it and make it an umbrella for everybody. That
Jordan,
is something
you
that I
are
would
a
not
teacher.
want at all.
So if
Not at all.
I was a student and my mother just died and I was in your classroom, you wouldn't even talk about it?
If that child, first off, that child might not want other people to know about it. So 100% I would not. I would talk to that child and encourage that child. What do you want to do?
And if they
talk to
said,
them, and then
I'd
whoever,
like-
and then there are other family members that are also grieving. How can we support you? I would
Right.
not be saying, hey guys, and talk, no, to me, that's more insensitive.
Jordan, that's not what I'm proposing.
That's what
I'm
you
saying,
said.
I'm saying you would want that kind of
No.
like ability to
That's
do
my
that.
fear, that's
if-
what you want
if
everyone to
this-
fall under this umbrella and we
If this
have to
student
push
is
this.
like, I'm having a hard
That's the whole
time,
reason why
and
I
you're like,
want the
how about we
advocacy
read a book
policy.
at the next reading time that talks about loss?
It-
Like, why wouldn't you do that?
But again,
Talking about pushing though, we're not.
Yeah.
no,
pushing
but
someone.
that to me would be, and that child might not want that. You do what's best for that child in that moment. Doesn't mean you have to bring other people into it. Those are individual situations, and like you said, as teachers, you identify that, you know how to deal with that. You don't,
What if that student says, I feel like everyone in the classroom is just staring at me because my mom died. I feel like no one wants to talk to me because the kids don't know what to say to me.
But
You
again,
know,
this
like,
is individual. Like you're coming up with this thing saying that telling the whole class would solve the problem. Like no,
no,
you
I'm
know
saying
the child.
if you thought that was something that would help.
Not everything.
I'm sorry.
And all right, so I'll be very clear. If you as the teacher thought that that was something that could help that situation, if that student came to you and was like, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to hear anything about it, you would absolutely respect that. I understand. But if this is something that you think this would be helpful, why wouldn't you want to be able to do that? And so now you get to high school, but now you get to high school and it's a little different because you aren't with the same kids like all day.
Neither are you in
Kids are
middle school.
bouncing around and stuff like that. And so we all know, you know, being a kid doesn't get easier every school you go to. It's just a different set of concerns, a different set of problems. And to your point, all the, 8 hours, 7 hours a day, 180 days a week, these staff know what's going on in the school. Like they know the vibes that are happening. They're hearing what's being said in the halls, etc. And so if they want to make an adjustment to advocate because they're hearing something, like I don't know, what if kids are talking a lot of bad things about immigrants or and they're like, we should talk about like
So
why
it's
people
not-
immigrate to
well,
this
that's-
country.
that's
and-
Not meant to
harassment.
stifle discussion. We got an email today from a community member which can show the other side to this issue. So in 2021, my son was singled out in class by a teacher who interjected a political opinion contrary to my son's into a small group student discussion they were having. Students got a real kick out of my son being served by this teacher. In 2022, a separate teacher created a hostile learning environment by voicing inappropriate and repeated anti-Christian sentiments in class all semester long, including proclaiming to the whole class that our good friend and pastor was gay simply because he was a priest. Both of these situations were reported. The first was blown off, the second was supposedly dealt with. Teachers are free to have their own beliefs, but they have no business pushing their religious or anti-religious or political ideologies on their students in the classroom. That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
But all of that would be covered under the old policy of political activities.
Well, what about
The
the
Christianity one,
anti-Christian
yeah.
sentiment? That's
That
not
wouldn't-
political.
That wouldn't be.
So
And
that's
I
what we're
don't know
talking about.
when did the person?
2021 and 2022 were those
Yeah,
examples.
and I want us to be, I want to validate the parents' concern there, but I don't want us to get bogged down in a rabbit hole
Yeah.
of something that happened a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was reported to administration. I don't know how it was handled.
Right.
But I don't know. And I do agree with Mr. Merkel Gump. The former policy with respect to political advocacy would cover this right here if it was a hostile learning environment predicated on political beliefs. So I
What
think
about the
Because beliefs
religious
about
aspect
religion would
of
be
it?
political beliefs.
something I've said in the planning session that we had with policy is I think a religious component could be added to this, where we have political activities and also religion with respect to proselytizing religious beliefs or trying to convert students, et cetera.
Well, not convert, but in this
Or
case
just,
it was
or
the
advocate
opposite.
anything religious,
Grooming
and
them.
I don't think, I think we need to be very careful. We can teach about religions in social studies classes, some English classes, et cetera, but I think when we start getting into, here are my personal beliefs, this is what I believe, and I think we're starting to get into some dangerous territory. as far as
And-
making folks uncomfortable.
Yeah.
As you know,
On
we
top
have
of
very-
which, that would be covered by First Amendment.
Correct.
Establishment clause issues. It's not even a
Yep.
matter of this policy.
Yeah, that is.
That would be a teacher
Yeah, it's
making
not-
a endorsement or non-endorsement
And it's
of
a
religion, which
Yeah.
they already, under
I mean, this was
federal
the
jurisdiction, cannot do.
But it happened.
It happens.
I understand. And so that teacher, as is said in here, she was informed that it was handled. She's not given the right to know exactly how it was handled, as no community member should expect. If a teacher is professionally disciplined, they get to know that something happened, but they don't necessarily get to know what the end result of what happened was. So from within this email, she's informing us that in both of these situations, conversations were had, policy was followed. She didn't like that these happened in the first place, and under this policy, they should not have happened in the first place. As a teacher, as somebody who works in a classroom, I feel like the added verbiage between this first version of the policy and then the later advocacy policy, I feel like that added verbiage is insulting to the professionalism of our teaching staff. They know how to reach their students. They know how to take care of their students.
You can't put everyone in a group like that at the same time. Like, yes, you hope that is what's expected, but you can't just so carefree say, yes, that's what everyone does, because that's not always the case.
Do we make the rule for the extreme, or do we hold the extreme accountable to the policy as it exists?
But, okay, at the same time, like, let's think about, you have the unions, right? A majority of people are a part of like the PSEA, which a portion of, and the local union, a portion of it goes to NEA. Now, this was political, so technically this would fall under the, if we went back to the old version, but they're in their news article, they were telling teachers, get off the sidelines, get involved, share your opinion. I still have a magazine that they have that article in, and to me, I completely and most utterly disagree with that.
Share your opinion with whom?
The students, like, get off the sidelines, get in there, share your opinion. I'll bring it, I'll bring it,
But the other
I'll
thing, I
email it.
mean, teachers have the right to opt out of the union and be fair share.
Correct.
If they don't agree.
Correct.
And just because the union advocates something does not mean that a teacher doesn't. So
Correct.
for instance, I know
Correct.
that there were lots of things from PSEA about getting involved, but not about speaking to it to your students, but about within your local community.
Right.
That is not the same as
That's
saying,
not the
go
same.
into your classroom and tell your
Agreed.
students who you're voting for and who you think they should vote for.
Right.
But that is once again covered under the older version of the policy. The added verbiage is unnecessary.
Right. And speaking though of union, like, we should be advertising multiple unions for new teachers to come in and join. So they do have that option, but do they know? I don't know. Sorry, sidebar.
So you'd be saying the added social, religion, sexual orientation, and gender identity is unnecessary?
I think so, yes. Especially because things like somebody's gender orientation, that's their right to exist. That's not something that we have a political opinion about.
But at the same time, there was a teacher that, it wasn't part of the curriculum, but they did show two clips, and one was like more about empowering women, and then one was about, and it showed men in a light of like, I don't know, being arrogant, being cocky, kind of.
Toxic masculinity.
Yeah, and that wasn't part of the curriculum, and that was shown in our school. So like, to me, those are also things, like if you just do political and you just do religion, then it's almost like that's okay. And you know, that's again, like, it's not like this is just something that we haven't seen.
There's also an assignment in an English class about like watching, you remember, I think it was a gay sex accident, and you had to rate how uncomfortable it made you. It was bizarre, and it was in an English class, like nothing to do with curriculum, really in
Right,
left
we could
field.
come up with a better writing prompt.
Huh?
Like, they could come up with a better writing prompt
Yeah.
than that.
And as I recall, there was an outcry and there was a conversation, and that teacher was just given the professional conversation about what would be appropriate and not appropriate.
I think we should also recognize,
That would already know.
as part of the College Board's prescribed curriculum with an AP psychology, there there are frameworks that are discussed with respect to sexuality and identity. So that was,
But I actually looked that up, agreed, it was like, it's supposed to be like one unit, it was supposed to be like a day, and the pieces that were shared, that wasn't part of that, like, unit. And there's still a lot of flexibility with AP courses, even through College Board, you have to send in the syllabus, you get it approved, so, you know, there's still a huge range there, but, again.
I just don't understand why we as a board would want to instill distrust and fear in
You're
our
not
staff.
still, you're making sure there's accountability there and that the trust stays
But that's even if they already don't
from
have
families.
accountability.
Yeah, like,
They're
well,
not trusting.
I feel like there have been examples of where it has been handled when those things happen, like
Well, no, a
where,
lot of them were not handled. I do think they would be.
Well, do we know a lot? I
treated
mean,
differently.
I just,
Do we
I,
know?
well, I'm just
I'm
gonna
not
say,
sure.
I'm very leery of what comes from old board members' memory of things that happen, because we usually find out that they're not exactly true. So I really don't wanna
Well,
base
that's
these
about-
conversations on what you guys think
We should have a
happened.
team working meeting soon.
We should.
Because you're really good at this.
Yeah.
But as much as this is fun, I just, so I'm sure we're gonna
So-
learn about it.
I still, so I look at this, and I look at another thing. So the Pennridge takes pride, trustworthy, acceptance, kindness, empathy, service, perseverance, respect, initiative, dependability, esteem building. And I look at this policy and I'm trustworthy, acceptance, kindness, empathy, like it's all out the window with this policy.
Yeah.
It's not giving acceptance, it's not kindness, it's not empathy. It's anti what Pennridge Takes Pride Initiative stands for.
I don't look at it like that. I look at it like, I don't think that they go in the same bucket. I feel like you shouldn't be
Acceptance
advocating
doesn't go
your,
in that
whatever
same bucket.
you're believing and putting in there.
But
You can
you're not
still be
act-
accepting, you can still be trustworthy, you can still show empathy with a side of this policy. So I disagree with that statement.
Now we have a policy that calls out specific groups of our students as something that's like someone's personal belief if they exist or not.
Listen, the students can have that. The teachers are not to be pushing it on. That's the difference. No one's saying that you
is the
can't
difference.
have any
Where
of
is
that.
there any evidence that like a teacher has made someone gay? Or a teacher has made someone change their
Where are they
identity?
pushing this, right?
You want
There's
them.
zero
Again,
evidence.
7
of
hours a
this.
day, 180 days a year, 180 days a year.
So I know you don't agree with me saying it's fear-based, but what you're talking about is literally the definition of fear-based policy, where you do it off like, well, you never know. We
I
just
don't-
have to be
it's not fair,
careful
but
when
it
there's
should
no
be, because you
evidence
should
to
be
show that
advocating.
there's
been
like a
plenty of
systematic
examples
problem.
we just stated.
And though I think it warrants pointing out here, if we truly had that power, I think my students would be studying for every test and I wouldn't have papers with no names on them. My point is, you're saying that we have an undue power, and I recognize that we do
No.
have influence. I'm saying
Yeah,
that
huge influence, especially in underdeveloped brains, children, yes, 100%. And it might not be to put your name on and put your grade, it might not be to that point, but 100% we do.
So you can convince them to be gay, but you can't convince them to
No,
break
no
pencil
one
in
said
class.
that. No one said you can convince them to be gay.
You just said that they're gonna like
No,
put
you
their
guys are stating that.
impressions-
You guys are putting it into a box, and that's not what it's for.
No,
No,
Jordan,
that's exactly what you're saying.
You are putting it into an all or nothing box where, you know, it becomes this scenario where
No.
a teacher can't even, you know, talk or share a personal story about them that they might feel like could connect because somehow they're going to advocate. So what this
No,
ends up
that's
being.
fear-mongering. That's what you created
No,
through this.
no,
That's
that's the
fear-mongering.
intent.
That's what
No.
you're creating.
That's what this
100%
policy
not.
creates.
No, and then you're saying
Jordan.
that children can't be who they are, students can't be who they are. That is exactly the opposite. That's not
No.
even, it doesn't even deal with that.
I'm
Children are allowed to
saying,
express themselves however they wish. It is
I'm
nothing
saying
like
that the teachers are afraid to even, some teachers actually are afraid to
Right,
even
because
have
I
a
heard three. I heard it was
conversation.
That I spoke to, I didn't speak to every teacher, don't have that.
To
Hey,
have a
but same with
conversation.
students. You guys act like it's never happening, and it doesn't happen at all. So that's the same
I'm
thing.
not
But
saying
we're
it's
saying
never
that when that
happened.
happens, there's a process in
Get
place to
data
handle
on
it.
that to see,
So you
because there's
bel-
been other times when they say things are happening and then we never get data, or no, I just heard it from my neighbor. That's what we need to know, what is actually happening.
Oh, you've heard a couple
So
examples.
you believe that there are teachers out there who groom kids?
I'm sorry?
You believe that there's teachers who are out there that groom kids?
Maybe yes.
To question their
Again, we
sexuality.
had an incident that happened at Pennridge, 100%. So to say that it's not possible, it's not happening, or you know for certain that it's not, that would just be, I mean,
But
I
once
don't know how you
again,
can
I wish to
100%
point
say
out
that.
very specifically here that this conversation in either direction on the idea of teachers grooming or not has absolutely nothing to do with your advocacy policy or your political activities policy. It is not at all linked to either of these two actions. That is a specific criminal act that does not
You're saying
connect
criminal act, but if you're
to
encouraging
speaking to
someone to
students.
believe what you're saying that's not criminal, that can be considered the same thing. If you're
Well,
trying to
you
get
can't
someone to
make
believe what
something a
you
crime,
believe,
Jordan.
and you give that opinion, and because you have that influence, that 100% can
But once again, to
That's not a
believe what you
crime,
believe is
but it's still
pushing
not
pol-
something that we should be doing.
So once again, to believe what you believe, you're pushing there now back to political beliefs.
It's not.
In
it's not
political
political.
beliefs, you're right. We 100% do not
It
have
could be
the
your
job of
values, your
pushing.
beliefs. It doesn't necessarily need to be just political.
So if there's a student and there's like student discussions going on, and a student, regardless of what they're talking about, is saying things that are just completely false, like, and the teacher knows, like, actually, what was proven is yada, 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 and this is what we're gonna study, this is what I'm talking about, where it's created this environment that teachers are even reluctant to even present facts around this, because
part of
it
the
was
curriculum.
turned political by this policy.
No, give a specific example of when that occurred and what was
So,
said.
I don't know when I'm giving a
Okay,
hypothetical
okay,
situation.
So, okay, there's a lot of hypotheticals, but then you want specifics on the opposite end. So this is a hypothetical.
No, I'm talking about things that actually happen in classrooms.
Well, then say
So
specifically what
far,
happened.
so far, the examples you've given were handled in processes and procedures that were already in
To
place.
be honest, we're not sure, because like when it goes up the chain, we don't know. We don't know how they're handled, just that we're told. That whether there was a conversation that happened, but to be honest, I do not know. For
So,
certain.
but there's a process to handle it, right? Like if
That's
the
why I
parent-
have that
when the
policy up
parent-
here,
when the
because I don't
parent
know the policy,
complains,
the process. I
They,
need to
you know,
know.
either reach out to the house principal, and if they aren't happy, like there is a whole process for how to handle that. And
Where's
that's
that
a
at?
process you were more than happy
Where's
to
that at?
toss back at our LGBTQ and students of color when they talk about their issues. Is like, talk to your house principal, follow the process that's already in place. We're not gonna do any policy changes to help you, but what we will do is we'll create a policy around something that is already being handled and doesn't even happen. Like when it happens, it's being handled. And other than
We
that,
don't know that.
there's no, Jordan, there's zero data that shows that someone can make someone gay.
No one said that. I never said that. You two are saying that. So
You
the
just
fact-
said, you
I
just said
did
that they
not.
can be young, impressionable minds.
I
and
didn't
they
say
can do
you
this,
said the
and-
gay part,
Then
not
what
me,
are
so
you- what are
do
you
not
talking-
take that.
So then what are you
I
talking
just
about?
said earlier, I literally just said, when Bradley was speaking, it's not about grooming, he was talking about criminal acts, you guys are talking
So
about
what
that. That's not.
impressionable minds are you concerned about? Like what topics are
No,
you worried
again,
about?
let me repeat, again, teachers should not be pushing on any of their beliefs or values outside of their curriculum of what they're teaching, should not happen, okay? There's been multiple examples that have been shared where they did not necessarily, they weren't part of the curriculum, they shouldn't have been discussed in the classroom. That's the piece. It has nothing to do with something saying like, they're gonna force somebody to be gay. But they should
Right.
not be pushing that on the student. The student can choose and do whatever they want, any of those things, but the teacher should not be, the teacher is supposed to be, we're here to educate kids. You should be teaching curriculum. When things come up, when there's situations, then you handle them individually.
Right.
This is
So
not something
students
that-
who are struggling, we're banking on like trickle up. That, you know, we
No,
don't have to put anything
again,
out there to create opportunities
Teachers
for
build
these kids
rapport
to
with
have the
students.
conversation.
Some students have close
We're just
relationships
gonna
with some teachers.
assume
No, you're
that
not
if they
assuming.
haven't said anything
Those
to
are
me,
in
that they're
place.
fine.
No, that's not. Again, they can be individual basis. Students have rapport with certain teachers over others, and that's how those things happen. And
I
you build
picked my
trust with
college
that.
major because my soccer coach told me it would be a good idea.
That's
Is
great.
that violating this policy? I wonder.
Well, see,
You know,
that's the
because you're
point.
like,
There's the fear mongering. Like you're coming up with that example, and that's not what's being discussed at all. That's not what the intention of this was.
Jordan.
At all.
Then please.
I already said it multiple times. We're just going to keep going down the rabbit hole.
All right. So then.
So we're gonna keep going round and round, so I look at it this way, is I don't support the policy for every reason I've stated 50 times. I support our LGBTQ kids, I support our BIPOC kids, I support our disabled population.
Support
I'm
all
there
our
for
kids.
all of them.
Yes,
I don't have to say
We
different
have-
things for all the kids.
yes.
Consensus to move this forward. Let's just move it forward with the understanding that where we all stand on it, rather than just yelling at each other for the next 45 minutes that we've already yelled at each other for.
So move forward with what?
Reverting back
Reverting
to
back to political
political
activities?
activities policy.
Well, where's your consensus?
We'll bring that back. We'll bring it back for first read as.
Wait, where's the
policy.
consensus for that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
All right,
6.
who wants to do that?
We can't vote.
Yep,
I know.
exactly. Well, you can't even have a consensus, there's not enough here, you have to wait, I guess, or Ron would have to put
Jordan,
something
you are
out.
literally making up rules of how
I'm
committees
not!
work.
Yes, you are!
Yes, you are.
You can't just say we're gonna move this forward because 2 people
So
say.
wait,
You have to have a consensus.
Jordan, how many, wait, hold on a
Robert's
second.
rules.
How many people are on
Conversation.
committee? How many people are on policy committee in this room right now?
You
1,
still
2, 3.
can't just
So
make that
just-
decision.
But Jordan, you're make no sense because the policy committee is only 5 people anyway.
But in
So-
order to move a policy forward and to have that, you have to have consensus. Just because you're a policy committee and you're on it.
Did you get consensus for the cheerleading overnight trip?
What, to put on? Tonight, it's not a policy.
Why is
This is a
policy any
policy.
different? So how committees work, just any committee, is you have the chairs
Right.
and they determine, like work with getting input from the board, working with admin, and then they prioritize and they go through and they gather the data and they look at best practices, all those things.
I just think it's so interesting, like a lot of the decisions are made when you're having just board leadership and you. And
Oh my
we
God, it
got
sounds like last year.
crucified when that happened with Megan and Dave.
Yeah.
It wasn't okay, but it's
$500 million.
okay now, and it's stated that this is how things run. But it's super
No,
interesting.
so let me just tell you, Jordan, we're not sitting here approving anything. We're not ramming policy through on
You're
first
ramming it
read.
right now.
No, we're
You guys
not.
would've
We
said it
are
too when we
following
went back.
the process.
Oh,
So
it's-
the issue with the last
Yeah, I
one was
can't.
that things were done without even board discussions with the entire board. So to have leadership of a committee, you know, like, because Bradley and Christine work with Kathy, I don't see anything until it's posted publicly, like, well, until she sends it to us. But like, I'm not in here being like, I don't think you should do that. Like, they're the chairs.
But you're pushing
They
forward
work
to
with
first
Kathy.
read already, to go to a board meeting, okay?
No,
That's what you're saying.
I
That's what
said
you're
we'll
saying you
bring
wanna
it
do.
back for first read as the new policy.
Wait, at the next committee meeting or at the board
At
meeting?
the committee meeting,
Okay.
because we haven't gone through.
Sorry, I misheard you. I thought you meant that you were gonna send it to first read
Well, I don't know,
at the
can
board
we,
meeting.
if we ever would agree that, I mean, it's a
See, that's
simple
not even
thing.
what Kaufman meant. He did mean to push
I
it to
don't
the
really
board
care, I
meeting.
think the policy's
And that would,
obnoxious
you should
and
need
dangerous
consensus
and-
for that.
Well, let's stop for a second. Let's look at the old policy. Let's review it, let's put it up on the screen. And I think we're having multiple conversations all in at the same time, so, I don't think there's any board member here that would wanna create an atmosphere of duress for kids. I think when we talk about policy, I'm not a board member, I don't get an opportunity to vote. These are your policies as board members. We're administration. We just, try to maintain the integrity of the policy, create administrative procedures around policy, and I think ultimately the goal is to ensure an inclusive environment where kids feel safe and heard. And I don't think, again, that any one board member wants to harm children. I think that everybody on this board, they're volunteers, no one's getting paid here, they're elected officials. And this is a very, very challenging job. And I think when we look at the policies and even procedures that we have, the goal is to make sure every kid in the district has a voice. Every staff member feels like they can be in an environment to help kids learn. And I think when we look at policy, that's what policy should do, is create an atmosphere where teachers can function effectively to support kids, and where kids can feel like they're affirmed in an environment, regardless of what they are inherently. So I think we're arguing about a lot that is kind of misdirected, misguided. And I think when we look at the old policy or the new policy or the retired policy and the policy that was brought into existence, I believe, in September of 2022, you have to make a decision as a board of what do you want to stand for and what do you want to stand on. And we will support that policy as administration, as leadership, but we too want a policy where any part of the population doesn't feel hurt and teachers feel like they have some freedom to work with any kid and create a classroom environment that is supportive and not pushing their agendas as professional staff members. I don't think, yeah, you could have outliers where there are teachers, just like in any organization, any profession, you could have people that are not in it to do things that are good and serve kids in a positive way. But I think our presumption has to be that most educators are in this to support kids, to educate kids, and to do the right thing. And when there are people who deviate from that, there's consequences, there's processes, there's a human resources department that is, one of their functions is to address matters, and we may not know what the outcome is, but we know that those matters are addressed. And I can tell you that the superintendent here next to me, who I've known for, I don't know, about half my life, will not tolerate incidents where teachers are pushing this specific agenda, that whether that be political or otherwise, it's not going to be tolerated. So I think there has to be a level of trust in the professionals here to make good decisions, and when bad decisions are made, that people will be held accountable. But the function of this board should be to create and alter policies in a way that supports kids and supports teachers.
So this older policy speaks about something different. This is about using district time, resources, whatever, for campaigning and, you know, supporting political activities.
Right, which is inappropriate.
Right. The one we were talking about is about neutrality in curriculum. So is there anything else, like in an employee handbook, that speaks about those types of matters, that, you know, saying what you said, that it's not in the teacher's purview to push personal beliefs in the classroom? Is that covered anywhere else?
I think that's something we'll have to talk to Ms. Mossman about.
I feel like that number one there says that, like, the exception to this is you political issues as they apply to curriculum and classroom studies. Like that's pretty much saying, number one, that the exception from the policy is, like, teachers obviously can discuss politics when it's part of the curriculum.
Right.
And that implies, therefore, that the entire policy applies to discussing politics within your classroom.
Okay, number one down there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just for politics, what Christine was saying, what said. That's different.
What do you mean by a personal belief?
It's not on there.
What
It's
do you
just
mean?
this is just political issues.
I know,
So
I'm
what
asking
he
for
said
an example.
about the purview, I don't want to make you re-say it again.
But no,
or what
what-
Christine asked, but.
What is your example of a personal belief that a teacher would discuss?
So if
that's
it's
not
outside of the
politics?
curriculum, and they just bring up a topic that, something dear to them that they want to discuss, that
So
could
if
be a
it's,
personally, it could be religion, it could be,
what if it's the Marine Corps?
I mean, if it goes to the, but.
But I mean, like, what's wrong? I don't feel like we want to discourage teachers from sharing parts of their lives, and, like, what.
No, but
what
we
if it's
gave
that, like, my
examples
son
of
just is
where it
going to
was,
Penn State,
where they
you know?
where they were part of assignments, or they
Yeah, what
were
were they?
discussed. Toxic masculinity,
What class was that a part of?
psychology.
That was, but
So that would probably be an appropriate thing
But
to
it's
discuss.
not a
in
part of the
psychology.
curriculum. It was like women empowerment, and it was like you men over here. It wasn't
That's your,
listed.
were you in the class? Like, that's your interpretation. I feel
No.
like
And was
something
it
like
a
that.
telling of belief, or was it
It
a
is like an
conversation
example.
starter
No,
for
it was
an
a video. It
appropriate
was a video
conversation for an
No.
AP psychology
And again, we're going to
class?
agree to disagree with this, but it wasn't in the curriculum. So some things that are like you're acting like it's just never. There's nothing else outside of that should be discussed, and that there hasn't been. There has. Like,
So that teacher who did that.
And
had a
maybe it's what
personal
Ern said,
belief
and
around
maybe because this was
masculine
before
toxicity.
you guys were
Yeah,
here, so
maybe.
maybe it is having that trust that when something happens, there'll be that. Because accountability is good for everybody. It's not meant to be fear-mongering. But when you don't have any, you push the boundaries. I'm a late person. I can roll in late. When my principal's telling me, like, Jordan, you're here late, I'm like, crap. And then it
You
gets
too.
me there on time. Like, I'm just saying, accountability is good for everybody. And when you don't have the boundaries, and when you sometimes don't have that expectations, you push them. That's all. That's where I feel like,
I do think we
That's
have
such an
a
archaic
clear
way of
process.
leading.
I agree.
No,
And
but
a
I
structured
have
process.
concerns, because I feel like that's just like a very old-fashioned way of leading, where it's like, I'm gonna set these
So what do you wanna do,
boundaries,
Lee?
and
Just be
when
like,
you
do
get
you.
out of
You do
them,
you.
then you're in trouble, like it's a discipline base, like da-da-da, where is proven to stifle creativity, lose trust. You actually end up with no one being honest with each other because they're afraid that they're gonna get in trouble or they're gonna get retribution or whatever. You're like, we are creating
boundaries. It's
but
good
you
to have
need to
healthy boundaries.
create
There's also a lot of science behind
trust-based leadership, trust-based leadership. And so our teachers aren't like walking off a school bus, graduating high school and walking in here and we're like, have at it, you know, teach our kids whatever you think is cool. There's so much structure in place here. And the implication that there's not enough then just takes away any sort of like freedom or wiggle room that a teacher could really do some amazing things with that too. And there's so many more examples of that, I would imagine, than like them coming in. So even the toxic masculine toxicity or whatever it was, you have no idea what the context of that was. And maybe it was something that started as a discussion in the classroom that kids were talking about it, and the teacher's like, let's look up what this is, let's watch the video, let's talk about it. Like, I feel like my whole education has been based on these like little side turns sometimes that come in because the class starts discussing something. Like, why wouldn't we give them that freedom? Why would we sit up here and say, like, you can only do exactly what's in here, nothing else, because we don't trust you?
No one's saying that. Nothing else.
You just said it's not in the curriculum, they can't do it.
As an aside, that I think kind of puts this into perspective. Several months ago, my wife and I were watching Boy Meets World, a TV show from the 90s. A lot of us watched it.
Excuse me, sorry.
And I sat there and I realized that 3/4 of the stuff we see Mr. Feeney teach those kids currently wouldn't be allowed in Pennridge.
Like, you gotta get with it. Like, this whole, like, we're just here for reading, writing, and arithmetic, it would work if we were living literally 50 years ago. We need to prepare the children for the world they're gonna be in, and it's so much more than just reading and writing and arithmetic.
And it's the authority of parents. That's always the piece that just gets left out. It's the ultimate authority
Parents
of
have never
parents.
not had authority over their own child in this district. Parents do not carry more authority over all children in this district.
Legally, you don't even have to tell a parent if a child wants to change their pronouns or their name. So yes, things are being taken away from parent authority.
That's
So-
not the school district doing it though. If that's the law, then that's the law. But, so as a parent though, here are some things we can do as a district. Hey, here's how you can have a healthy conversation with your child about their gender if they're having questions. But we aren't even allowed to talk about that. We could train the teachers to understand, like, what do you do when a child comes to you and they're saying, like, I'm not sure, oh, we took that training
Because then you're
away
taking
too.
one person's thing of saying this is how you should do
No,
it.
Jordan,
Like,
you're mistaking
no,
like knowledge with like this evil idea to do something.
It's not an evil
The
idea.
best thing we
It's
can
overreaching.
do, the
It's
best thing we
overreaching
can
and trying
do
to
is
take over the parent's
prepare
role. I'm
our
sorry.
staff to help with this. I can't imagine teachers are
No.
like, great, I'm gonna
Because
take
I do
this
not
and deal
want
with
a
it all
staff member
myself.
talking to my child about those things. And that's a bunch of other parents in the community. So that's fine that you want that, and that's why I love the event that was held that night for people to go to. I think that's awesome. Great, I could totally get behind more things
Right.
like that. But not pushing it into the school when that is not our responsibility, our primary responsibility.
No, we are responsible for the whole child when they're here, the whole child when they're here.
But
So if
you
that-
guys want to push all those other things in it, where sometimes it does, it takes away from
It's
the
not
parent.
pushing it,
We're gonna
it's
keep arguing.
training,
Can we
it's
move on?
making
Can
sure
we move
people
forward to
have
whatever
the tools.
your
I'm gonna finish
suggestion
my thought
is?
because Jordan keeps interrupting me. It's ensuring that they have the tools they need to handle this.
Parents also need to
Jordan,
have
there's a
different-
lot of really bad parents in the world too.
There are, but then
And-
there's also processes in place for that. That's not with the school related. Go there, fight that part of the
So,
social services piece.
if-
Go do that.
If my daughter is like hysterical in school for whatever reason, you want them to be like, yeah, your mom's got to deal with this.
Right, that's exactly what I said. No, that's
You just
not
said
what I
it's the
said.
parents.
No, I
Like,
didn't.
what would that teacher be allowed to talk to me
You're getting
about?
small specifics, no.
What would that
I'm
teacher
making
be
more of a
allowed to talk
general.
to me about?
I mentioned what you would do earlier. Can we just move on to what Ernest's suggestions would be?
Answer my
moving forward?
question. What would that teacher be allowed to talk to my daughter about? What would be
Again-
the first question that they are allowed to ask?
You would have that conversation. You can't just say, what would you talk about? You have to feel it out in the situation with that child. You wouldn't just say, sorry, I can't talk to you like that. Come on, no, that's not how it happens. I discussed that
What
earlier.
if I'm a female student and I am freaking out because I'm worried that I just saw something on TikTok or Snapchat about me that I know is not true, and they're like,
That happens all the time. That happens all the time.
Okay, so what questions are
Can we
you
move
allowed
on?
to ask?
Can we move on?
No, you need to answer my question.
No, because again, it would have to be an individual, like, what did they see? They come to you all the time, and you have this conversation. You earlier said, like, you would bring it up and have a whole classroom discussion.
No.
You don't put it under the
Jordan,
umbrella. You
that
handle
is
it, and
not
you do discuss
what I
it.
said. I
And
said,
then
why
if
would
it
we
is a
stop
situation
that?
where a parent is, where there's a lot of bad parents, then you go, there's processes in place where you report it, and you handle it appropriately. It's not something where then you bring into every single student and you have to train all the staff on this. You take those individuals, and then you have people. You have guidance counselors, you have lakeside counselors, you have social service
How many
people
guidance
within.
counselors do we have for this whole high school?
You still have them in place.
How many do you have?
And if you think we need more, then bring that to the
So
table.
if you don't know all the information that you're talking about, you lose credibility.
You
How
don't
many-
either, same thing.
How
You
many
lose
guidance
credibility.
counselors do we have in the high school? How many students do we have here?
In the high school,
Yeah.
23, 24.
How many social workers do we have in the district?
Great.
How many
In the whole
students are in the
district.
district?
3 social
I
workers.
can't, I'm
No,
gonna be
no,
able
I'm
to
not
answer a
sure.
few
No.
more of these, but
Oh, I
boom,
guess
boom.
they
So
lose
3
credibility.
social
Try
workers.
it.
3
No.
social,
That's what you
hold
said.
on,
You
hold
lose
on, everyone, hold
credibility.
on.
No.
Can I answer
Information.
the question,
Eyes.
please? We have 3 social workers in the district. We have 6 lakeside counselors in the district. We have 8 counselors at the high school. Every elementary school has a school counselor, and the middle school, help me out, Mr. Johnson.
2 per school.
2 per school.
I'm sorry, but guidance counselors.
Yeah,
That's
school
what you're talking
counselors.
about.
We call them school counselors.
But,
They're
so
guidance.
they're not qualified as counselors in the, like, mental
Well,
health.
And
Lakeside,
neither are
Lakeside
teachers,
is
right?
at middle school as well.
So I'm
But the
telling you
point
that
is that we
mathematically your
have 3
solution
social
won't even
workers
work.
for 7,000
No,
students.
because it's not
which is
every
off
single
the top of
child,
my
Which
not
head.
every
is
single child is
to a
having
lot of
the
school
experience
districts.
that you're
33.
stating right in that moment.
Correct,
It's not
but
every single student.
that's
So when you say
actually
you need to have that, not
good
every
compared to
single
other
student is
schools.
going to need that service.
All
Okay,
right,
where I think we're,
let's bring this home.
So we'll bring it back for first read, back to the original political activism policy.
so right now, just so he and I understand, going back to a first read on this next
Well,
Back to the
actually, I have a,
retired policy as a first read?
yeah, back to retire, or can we take that to the board for a vote, or do we have to do a committee?
Well,
I don't think you need consensus, but maybe that's what I'm like,
Jordan, that's just a rule you made up.
I guess so. I guess so.
You can't even have consensus with a committee of 5, right?
No, I think it's the board, I think it's board consensus.
But
That's
per-
Robert's rules. That's, I mean.
But our
Maybe
committees
some
are set up for only 5 people, so if just the committee was here, we'd
Right, but
never
wait,
be able to
but-
bring anything to the board?
No, you can. You totally can, but a lot of
Okay.
times that's how it's supposed to
So
work, like the
if
way that
we
you function as a board.
Feel like we
you're
have a
supposed to have
consensus that we wanna go back to the first one, I can ask Mike then, you want me to ask Mike if we could just bring it to board for first read?
Yes.
and, yeah,
Yeah.
and go over the language
Still want to change that word to sense of the
word
meeting.
by word.
To
To
what?
I said, still want to change that word to sense of the meeting.
I like that. I need to adopt that.
To what?
Instead of
So
consensus,
there's a
sense
term,
of the
sense
meeting.
of the meeting, as opposed to
Jordan
consensus.
just said you had to have 5 votes, like, it's just whatever would answer her question is the new rule.
Right, that's exactly what I
So-
said.
You said we don't have 5 votes,
That would be consensus. You need 5
but then
of
you
the
just
board.
said it's sense of the meeting.
No, he said he wants to change
said
consensus
I
to
like
sense
that.
of the meeting. And
And
I
you
said,
said I like
I
I love that
because it's not as
Are we
divisive.
going?
It triggers you, Leah. Consensus triggers you. So I was going to try to
No,
go with a
it's
different
made up,
verbiage.
Jordan.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll follow up with Mike, and if we could bring this back to first read, and bring it to first read at the next board meeting, reverting it back to the retired policy.
And according to dictionary.com, consensus says majority of opinion, so
Right.
that would be 3 out of 5.
But I'm pretty sure if you need it, again, I could be wrong, I'm not saying it's right, but it could be, I'm pretty sure Robert's rules, it's of the
So,
board.
but that is actually why we bring it to board to vote, because we find out there if there's a consensus.
But you still,
right?
in order to like push something forward, typically you need
Alright, we're done.
consensus.
Would you like me to?
Are there
End
any
of
public
meeting,
comments?
public
Can we just
comment?
ask, anyone else
I'm
have
sorry,
public
I'm gonna look
comment?
for your book real quick.
No? I think that was it. Alright, so, next, oh, I lost my laptop. I don't even know when the next community meeting is. It's coming up, it's next month.
Yeah.
Alright, so that was it for policy committee.